Deep within the northern crater, where the wound of an ancient meteor strike still festers against the planet's surface, a figure floats in crystalline suspension. Silver hair cascades like a waterfall of moonlight. A single black wing unfurls from his back, its feathers absorbing the green glow of the life stream that courses through the chamber. His eyes remain closed, but behind those lids, consciousness burns with terrible purpose. This is Sephiroth. Hero, weapon, monster, god. His story is one of the most tragic and terrifying in all of gaming. A tale of how the greatest warrior humanity ever produced became its ultimate destroyer. The name Sephiroth means different things to different people. To the citizens of the world, in Final Fantasy VII, before everything fell apart, he was a legend, the perfect soldier, the silver-haired warrior who ended the Wutai War and stood as the pinnacle of human achievement. To his enemies, he was death incarnate, an unstoppable force that moved through battlefields like a dancer, his impossibly long blade carving through opposition with surgical precision. To the young men who dreamed of joining Soldier, including a spike-haired boy from Nibelheim named Cloud Strife, Sephiroth was a hero, an ideal to aspire toward. Proof that with enough dedication and strength, one could transcend ordinary human limitations. But to those who knew the truth, to those who understood what Sephiroth truly was and what had been done to create him, he represented something far more sinister. He was the culmination of decades of unethical experimentation. He was the child of a scientist's ambition and a woman's sacrifice. He was a weapon forged in the laboratories beneath Nibelheim, his very DNA altered before birth by the cells of an extraterrestrial entity that had nearly destroyed the planet 2,000 years prior. Sephiroth was, in many ways, never truly human at all. And when he finally learned this truth, when the foundations of his identity crumbled beneath the weight of horrifying revelation, the greatest hero the world had ever known became its greatest nightmare. Understanding Sephiroth requires understanding the world that created him, the forces that shaped him, and the moment of revelation that broke him. It requires diving into the twisted history of the Jenova project, exploring the relationship between a brilliant but morally bankrupt scientist and the woman he experimented upon, and tracing the path from Sephiroth's birth to his transformation into a being that sought to ascend to godhood by wounding the planet itself. This is a story that spans the entirety of Final Fantasy VII's timeline, from events decades before the game begins to the climactic confrontation in the northern crater, and even beyond into the Advent children film and the alternate realities explored in the remake trilogy. The Sephiroth we meet at the game's opening is not the same being who appears in flashbacks. This is important to understand from the beginning. What Cloud and his companions chase across the planet, what murders President Shinra and leaves a trail of bodies in its wake, what beckons them toward the black materia and the summoning of Meteor. This is not technically Sephiroth himself, but rather his will controlling the remains of Jenova's body. The real Sephiroth, the physical body of the man who once served as Soldier First Class, encases itself in crystalline lifestream at the northern crater, absorbing knowledge and power while his consciousness puppets Jenova's form across the world. This distinction becomes crucial when understanding both the plot of Final Fantasy VII and the nature of what Sephiroth has become. But who was Sephiroth before the northern crater? Who was the man before the monster? To answer that, we must travel back 30 years before the events of Final Fantasy VII, to the laboratories hidden beneath the Shinra mansion in Nibelheim, where two scientists embarked on a project that would forever alter the course of history. We must witness the birth of a child who was never meant to be normal, who carried within his cells the genetic material of an alien entity mistakenly believed to be an ancient, one of the Cetra who once communed with the planet itself. We must watch as this child grew into a warrior of unparalleled skill, never knowing the truth of his origins, serving the very corporation that had created him as a living weapon. And then, inevitably, we must follow Sephiroth to Nibelheim once more, to the reactor on Mount Nebel, to the moment when everything changed. We must stand beside him as he reads the reports in the Shinra mansion basement, as he pieces together the fragments of his creation, as his sanity fractures under the weight of believing himself to be the last ancient, the rightful inheritor of a world that had been stolen from him. We must watch as he burns Nibelheim to the ground, as he carries Jenova's severed head into the reactor, as he is seemingly killed by a young infantry soldier who would go on to adopt fragments of Sephiroth's own past. But death, it turns out, was not the end for Sephiroth. Instead, it was a transformation. Falling into the life stream with Jenova's cells still active within him, Sephiroth's consciousness did not dissolve into the river of souls as it should have. Instead, his powerful will overpowered Jenova's instinctive drive, taking control of her cells and using them as a network through which he could influence the world above. With access to the accumulated knowledge of the life stream, Sephiroth learned truths that had been hidden from him in life. He learned that Jenova was not an ancient at all, but rather a calamity from the skies, an extraterrestrial parasite that had nearly destroyed the Cetra and the planet itself. But this knowledge did not humble Sephiroth. It did not make him reconsider his path. Instead, it focused his purpose with terrible clarity. If he was not the last ancient, then he would become something greater. He would use Jenova's power and the knowledge of the life stream to ascend beyond humanity, beyond even the ancients themselves. He would summon Meteor to wound the planet so deeply that the life stream would rush to heal the injury, and he would position himself at the center of that wound, absorbing the planet's very life force and transforming into a god. A being who could ride the dying world like a vessel through the cosmos, searching for new planets to consume, repeating the cycle eternally. This plan, mad as it sounds, very nearly succeeded. Throughout Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth manipulates events from within the northern crater, using his control over Jenova's cells to puppet those infected with them, including Cloud himself. The reunion theory, originally proposed by Professor Hojo, stated that those carrying Jenova's cells would feel an irresistible pull to return to the main body. Sephiroth weaponized this theory, using it to draw his puppets toward him, eventually manipulating Cloud into retrieving the black materia and bringing it to the northern crater. The summoning of Meteor succeeded. The weapon of ultimate destruction hurtled toward the planet, and for a time, it appeared that Sephiroth would achieve his dark apotheosis. But Sephiroth underestimated one crucial element of his plan. He underestimated the bonds between Cloud and his companions, the connections forged through shared struggle and loss. He underestimated Aerith's sacrifice and her ability to call forth holy even from beyond death. And perhaps most critically, he underestimated Cloud's will to break free from his manipulation, to reconstruct his shattered psyche with Tifa's help, and to face him in battle as an equal rather than a puppet. The final confrontation between Cloud and Sephiroth, first against his monstrous Bizarro Sephiroth form, then against the truly terrifying Safer Sephiroth, and finally in the mental realm where Cloud severed the last threads of Sephiroth's control, represents the triumph of humanity and connection over transcendent power and isolation. Yet even death a second time did not end Sephiroth's story. His cells remained scattered throughout the population of those who had been exposed to Jenova. These cells, carrying fragments of his will, coalesced into the disease known as geostigma in the 2 years following Meteor's defeat. 3 remnants of Sephiroth, Kadaj, Loz, and Yazoo, emerged, physical manifestations of his lingering will, searching for what remained of Jenova's cells so that they might trigger a new reunion and resurrect their mother. When Kadaj finally absorbed Jenova's cells, Sephiroth was reborn, engaging Cloud in battle once more above the ruins of Midgar. Only through Aerith's intervention, curing the geostigma and removing the taint of Jenova from the lifestream, was Sephiroth finally truly defeated. Or was he? The remake trilogy introduces yet another dimension to Sephiroth's existence. In Final Fantasy VII, Remake and Rebirth, we encounter a Sephiroth who seems aware of the original timeline, who speaks of 7 seconds before the end and urges Cloud to defy destiny alongside him. This Sephiroth appears to have knowledge that should be impossible, suggesting he may have retained consciousness or memories even after his defeat in Advent Children. The battle against the Arbiters of Fate at the end of Remake implies that Sephiroth seeks to break free from the predetermined timeline, to create a future where he might succeed where he previously failed. The full implications of this remain to be seen, but they suggest that Sephiroth's story may be even more complex and far-reaching than originally understood. To truly understand Sephiroth, We must examine every facet of his existence. We must explore his conception and birth, the result of Professor Hojo's twisted experiments on his own unborn child. We must trace his childhood and training, about which little is known, but which must have been shaped by Shinra's desire to mold him into the perfect weapon. We must follow his career as soldier first class, his legendary status, and the burden of living up to an impossible ideal. We must walk with him through the Wutai War, where his reputation as a hero was cemented. We must accompany him to Nibelheim and watch as his world crumbles. We must understand his transformation in the Lifestream and his emergence as something both more and less than human. We must analyze his philosophy, his goals, and the terrible logic that drives him. And we must confront the question of whether Sephiroth is a villain of his own making or a victim of the system that created him. Or if such distinctions even matter when faced with the magnitude of destruction he seeks to unleash. This is the complete story of Sephiroth, from hero to god, from human to monster, from legend to nightmare. It is a story of science unchecked by ethics, of identity shattered by truth, of the thin line between savior and destroyer. It is a story that has captivated players for nearly 3 decades, that has made Sephiroth one of the most iconic villains in all of gaming, and that continues to evolve with each new entry in the Final Fantasy VII saga. Let us begin at the beginning, in the laboratories where ambition and love collided to create something that should never have existed. Let us trace the path of the silver-haired warrior from birth to transcendence. Let us understand Sephiroth, 30 years before Cloud Strife would ever set foot in a Mako reactor, before Avalanche would strike against Shinra, before the world would know the name Sephiroth. A decision was made that would alter the course of history. In the basement of the Shinra mansion in Nibelheim, a team of scientists embarked on an experiment that would blur the lines between human and something altogether other. This was the Jenova project, and its success would be measured not in the advancement of knowledge, but in the creation of a living weapon unlike anything the world had ever seen. To understand the Jenova project, we must first understand what Jenova was and how it came to be in Shinra's possession. 2,000 years before the main events of Final Fantasy VII, an extraterrestrial entity crashed into the planet aboard a meteorite, creating what would become known as the Northern Crater. This entity, which the Cetra, the planet's original inhabitants, gifted with the ability to commune with the Lifestream, called the Calamity from the Skies, was unlike anything native to the world. Jenova was a parasitic organism with terrifying capabilities. She could shapeshift, taking on the forms of those she encountered. She could inject her cells into other organisms, transforming them into monsters. And perhaps most disturbingly, her cells retained a form of collective consciousness, maintaining the ability to influence those infected with them even when separated from the main body. Jenova nearly succeeded in destroying the planet. The Cetra fought against her, and though they eventually managed to seal her away in the Northern Crater, the cost was catastrophic. The Cetra population was devastated, reduced to near extinction. Over the following millennia, they faded from history, becoming little more than legend, with only one confirmed descendant remaining by the modern era, a young woman named Aerith Gainsborough. The planet itself had been grievously wounded, and even 2,000 years later, the Northern Crater remained frozen, the planet's energy gathering there in an attempt to heal the ancient injury. Jenova's remains lay dormant in that frozen wasteland until approximately 50 years before the events of Final Fantasy VII, when Shinra scientists, led by the brilliant Professor Gast Faramis, discovered them. Gast, seeking to advance Shinra's understanding of the ancients and locate the fabled Promised Land, a place of legend said to be abundant with Mako energy, made a critical error. He misidentified Jenova's remains as those of an ancient, a Cetra. This mistake would have catastrophic consequences, for it led Shinra to believe they had discovered the key to creating beings with the ancients' powers. Beings who could lead them to unlimited energy and cement Shinra's control over the planet. The Jenova project was born from this misunderstanding. Gast proposed creating a human Cetra hybrid, a being that would possess the ancients' ability to communicate with the planet and would guide Shinra to the Promised Land. The project was divided into 2 competing branches, both attempting to achieve this goal through different means. Professor Hollander led Project G, focusing on a woman named Gillian Hewley as his test subject. Professor Hojo, Gast's ambitious assistant, led Project S, and for his test subject, Hojo chose someone close to him, his colleague and eventually lover, Lucretia Crescent. Lucretia Crescent was a brilliant scientist in her own right, specializing in the chaos and Omega weapon theories. She was beautiful, intelligent, and dedicated to her work. She was also tragically vulnerable to Hojo's manipulation. The exact nature of their relationship remains somewhat unclear, but what is known is this. Lucretia became pregnant with Hojo's child, and Hojo saw an opportunity. Rather than simply injecting an adult with Jenova's cells, he would inject a human fetus, allowing the cells to integrate with the developing organism from the very beginning. Lucretia would carry this child, and the result would be the ultimate fusion of human and ancient. At least, that's what Hojo believed he was creating. There was one person who might have stopped this atrocity: Vincent Valentine. Vincent was a Turk, a member of Shinra's elite covert operations unit, assigned to guard the scientists working in Nibelheim. During his time there, Vincent fell deeply in love with Lucretia. When he learned of Hojo's plans to experiment on their unborn child, Vincent confronted the scientist, pleading with Lucretia to reconsider, to not allow their child to be used as a test subject. But Lucretia, whether out of scientific dedication, guilt over a past connection to Vincent, or manipulation by Hojo, refused to stop the project. She would proceed with the pregnancy, and she would allow Hojo to inject Jenova's cells into their unborn child. Vincent's protests led to his own tragedy. When he continued to object, Hojo shot him. But rather than allowing Vincent to die, Hojo used him as another test subject, conducting experiments that would transform Vincent into an immortal being, unable to age, infused with genetic material that gave him the ability to transform into monstrous forms. Hojo then sealed Vincent in a coffin in the Shinra mansion basement, where he would remain for nearly 30 years, sleeping through guilt and despair, until Cloud and his companions would eventually discover and recruit him. The child of Lucretia and Hojo was born without complications, at least physically. The Jenova cells had successfully integrated with the developing fetus, creating something unprecedented, a human infant with the cells of an extraterrestrial entity woven into his very DNA. Hojo named the child Sephiroth, after the Kabbalistic concept of the Tree of Life's divine emanations, marking him as something meant to transcend ordinary human existence from the moment of his birth. Project S was declared a success, superior to Project G, and Hojo's status within Shinra's scientific division was cemented. Professor Hollander, whose Project G subjects, Genesis Rhapsodos and Angel Hewley, were deemed inferior, was disgraced, though he retained his position within the company. But success came at a terrible price that would not be calculated for many years. Lucretia, after giving birth, was not allowed to hold her child. Shinra immediately took Sephiroth away to be raised and trained according to their specifications. The separation devastated Lucretia. She had already been experiencing disturbing premonitions during her pregnancy. Visions of a dark future for her child and the reality of having him taken from her drove her to the brink. She vanished from Nibelheim, eventually making her way to a crystal cave where she would seal herself away, her body sustained by the Jenova cells she had been exposed to during pregnancy. Trapped in a crystalline prison of her own making, unable to die yet unable to truly live, Vincent would eventually discover her there, finding the woman he loved transformed into something that was neither alive nor dead, forever tormented by what she had allowed to be done to her son. Sephiroth, meanwhile, knew none of this. He was raised by Shinra, though the specifics of his childhood remain largely unknown. What is certain is that he was never told the truth about his origins. He knew his mother's name was Jenova, but he was told she died in childbirth. He knew nothing of Lucretia. He knew nothing of the experiments that created him. He was simply told he was special, exceptional, destined for greatness. And in many ways, this was true. From his earliest years, Sephiroth displayed abilities that far exceeded normal human capacity. His strength, speed, reflexes, and intelligence were all superhuman, gifts of the Jenova cells integrated into his body. The integration of Jenova's cells gave Sephiroth more than just physical superiority. Unlike the subjects of Project G, who exhibited cellular degradation that would eventually kill them, Sephiroth's cells were stable, unlike the members of Soldier, who would later be injected with Jenova cells and infused with Mako energy. Sephiroth had been exposed to Jenova from before birth, allowing for a perfect fusion. The cells granted him accelerated healing, resistance to the negative effects of Mako exposure, and an affinity for manipulating spiritual energy that would later prove crucial to his transformation. In essence, Hojo had succeeded beyond his wildest expectations in creating a superhuman. He had simply failed to create an ancient, though he wouldn't realize his error for many years. As Sephiroth grew, Shinra shaped him into their ultimate weapon. He was trained in combat from a young age, developing mastery of the sword that would become legendary. His weapon of choice was the Masamune, an impossibly long katana that most people couldn't even lift, let alone wield effectively. In Sephiroth's hands, the Masamune moved like an extension of his will, capable of striking with surgical precision or overwhelming force as needed. He was also trained in magic, learning to channel Materia's power with an efficiency that few could match. By the time he reached adolescence, Sephiroth had already surpassed every other warrior Shinra had ever produced. The success of Project S led directly to the creation of the SOLDIER program. Inspired by Sephiroth's abilities, Shinra developed a process to create super soldiers on a larger scale. Candidates with the proper physical and mental fortitude would be injected with Jenova cells, though they were not told the true nature of what was being injected into them, and then submerged in Mako energy. The Mako would enhance their physical abilities, while the Jenova cells would stabilize the process and grant them increased strength, speed, and healing capabilities. The process was dangerous. Many candidates did not survive, and others suffered psychological breakdown due to Mako poisoning. But those who succeeded became soldier operatives, warriors far superior to normal humans. Yet none of them, not even the legendary first-class members, could approach Sephiroth's level. He remained unique, the pinnacle of what the Jenova project had achieved. Genesis Rhapsodos and Angel Hewley, the subjects of Project G, also became soldier first-class members. Unlike Sephiroth, they had been born to a woman, Jillian Hewley, who had been injected with Jenova cells before their conception, making them 1 degree removed from direct exposure. They possessed some enhanced abilities, but they also carried a fatal flaw. Their cells degraded over time, a condition that would eventually spread to their copies and clones, creating a crisis that would drive Genesis to madness and Angel to despair. This degradation was the key difference between Project G and Project S. The reason Hojo's method was deemed superior: Sephiroth's cells were perfect, stable, immortal in their way. He would not degrade, he would not fail. He was, from Shinra's perspective, flawless, but there was something Hojo hadn't accounted for, something no one had anticipated. Sephiroth was not merely a biological construct, a weapon to be wielded at Shinra's discretion. He was a thinking, feeling being with his own sense of identity and his own capacity for psychological trauma. The very perfection of his creation, the isolation it imposed, and the weight of being seen as Shinra's greatest achievement rather than as a person, all took their toll. Sephiroth was alone in a way few people ever experience. There was literally no one else like him, no one who could understand what it was to be what he was. His relationships with other soldier members were collegial but distant. He was admired, even worshipped, but rarely seen as an equal or a friend. This isolation would become crucial when the truth of his origins finally emerged. A person with strong connections, with bonds of friendship and love, might have found the strength to weather the revelation of what had been done to him. But Sephiroth had no such support system. He had comrades, but no close friends. He had admirers, but no one he could truly trust with his doubts and fears. He was, in essence, a weapon that had been given consciousness, but not community. Power, but not purpose beyond what Shinra dictated. And when that purpose was stripped away, when he learned what he truly was, there would be nothing to catch him as he fell into madness. Yet all of this lay in the future. For now, in the years following his birth and throughout his childhood and adolescence, Sephiroth was simply Shinra's greatest success story. He was the hero they had engineered, the warrior who would ensure their dominance. He was raised to fight, trained to obey, and expected to excel beyond all others. And he did. He exceeded every expectation, surpassed every benchmark, and became exactly what they had designed him to be. The question was not whether Sephiroth would become a legendary warrior. That was inevitable from the moment Jenova's cells were injected into Lucretia's womb. The question was, what would happen when this legendary warrior finally learned the truth about his existence? What would happen when the perfect weapon discovered it had been manufactured rather than born? That its very existence was an abomination? That the mother it thought had died in childbirth had never existed in the way it believed? The Jenova project's true legacy was not the creation of Soldier or the advancement of Shinra's military capabilities. Its true legacy was Sephiroth himself, a being of unparalleled power who would, when finally confronted with the horror of his own existence, decide that if he had been made into a monster, he would become a god. The seeds of Final Fantasy VII's catastrophe were planted in that laboratory in Nibelheim 30 years before the game begins, in the moment when Hojo decided his ambition was more important than ethics, when Lucretia decided her guilt or scientific curiosity was more important than her unborn child, when Shinra decided that creating the ultimate weapon was worth any price. They succeeded in creating that weapon. They simply failed to anticipate what would happen when the weapon learned to think for itself, to question its purpose, and to choose its own path, even if that path led to the destruction of everything they had built and the planet itself. The years between Sephiroth's birth and the Nibelheim incident remain largely shrouded in mystery. But what fragments we know paint a picture of a young man shaped by extraordinary circumstances into something beyond ordinary human experience. From his earliest days, Sephiroth was never allowed to be simply a child. He was Shinra's investment, their masterpiece, the living proof that their investment in the Jenova project had been worthwhile. Every moment of his development was measured, analyzed, and directed toward a single goal, creating the ultimate warrior. We know little of Sephiroth's early childhood, but we can infer much from what came after. There are no records of him having a normal family life, no mentions of friends from his youth, no stories of playgrounds or schools. Instead, Sephiroth's childhood was almost certainly spent in training facilities, learning combat techniques before most children learn to read, mastering weapons before understanding how to form meaningful human connections. Shinra would have wanted to shape his development from the beginning, to ensure that his extraordinary physical gifts were matched by perfect discipline and unwavering loyalty to the company. They succeeded at the first two objectives. The third would ultimately prove more complicated. By the time Sephiroth entered his teenage years, he had already surpassed adult soldiers in combat capability. His physical strength was superhuman, allowing him to wield the massive Masamune with single-handed ease, while his speed made him appear to teleport across battlefields, striking and vanishing before opponents could react. But it was not just his physical abilities that marked him as exceptional. Sephiroth possessed a sharp, analytical mind capable of assessing tactical situations with remarkable clarity. He was educated in strategy, history, science, and the arts of war. Hojo may have created a weapon, but that weapon had been given one of the finest educations money could buy. Sephiroth was not merely strong, he was brilliant, capable of outsmarting opponents as easily as overpowering them. His official entry into Soldier, Shinra's elite military force, was less a question of whether he would qualify and more a formality acknowledging what everyone already knew: that Sephiroth was destined to stand at the very pinnacle of the organization. The Soldier program, which had been inspired by his own creation, existed in three classes. Third-class members were enhanced but still relatively close to peak human ability. Second-class members displayed clearly superhuman capabilities, and first-class members were rare individuals who had not only survived the enhancement process but excelled beyond all reasonable expectations, becoming legendary warriors in their own right. Sephiroth's promotion to first class was swift and inevitable. He didn't just meet the standards, he redefined them. But Sephiroth's time in Soldier was not entirely solitary. He did form relationships with other elite warriors, connections that, while not exactly friendships in the conventional sense, represented the closest things to peer relationships he would experience. Two of these relationships would prove particularly significant: his connections with Genesis Rhapsodos and Angeal Hewley, both of whom were also first-class soldier members and, unbeknownst to Sephiroth, fellow products of the Jenova project, though from the less successful Project G. Genesis Rhapsodos was a warrior of exceptional skill, perhaps the second most powerful member of Soldier after Sephiroth himself. He was also a man of culture, obsessed with the epic poem Loveless and prone to quoting it at length. Genesis possessed a fierce competitive spirit and something that might have been friendship with Sephiroth, though it was complicated by resentment at always standing in Sephiroth's shadow. Genesis wanted to be seen as Sephiroth's equal, but no matter how skilled he became, no matter how many victories he claimed, he remained second best. This resentment would eventually metastasize into something darker when Genesis learned the truth of his own creation and the cellular degradation that was killing him. But in the years before that revelation, Genesis and Sephiroth worked together on missions, traded philosophical observations, and existed in that strange space between rivals and comrades. Angeal Hewley represented something different in Sephiroth's life, perhaps the closest thing to a true friend that Sephiroth had. Angeal was a man of honor, someone who genuinely believed in doing what was right rather than simply following orders. His personal philosophy centered on dreams and honor, concepts he would later pass on to his student, Zack Fair. Angeal was less concerned with proving himself than with living up to his own ideals. He carried the Buster Sword, a massive blade that had been crafted by his father, but he rarely used it in combat, believing it should be reserved for truly important occasions, for protecting honor. In Angeal, Sephiroth might have found someone who saw him not as a legend or a weapon, but as a person. Angeal's respect for Sephiroth seemed genuine, untainted by envy or worship. It was perhaps the most normal relationship Sephiroth ever had. The three of them, Sephiroth, Genesis, and Angeal, represented the pinnacle of Soldier's achievement. They were the legendary first-class trio, warriors whose exploits would become the stuff of mythology. Young men throughout the world dreamed of joining Soldier and becoming like them. None more so than a young Zack Fair, who idolized the legendary warriors and especially Angeal or Cloudstrife, who held Sephiroth in particular awe. The three were occasionally deployed together on high-priority missions, where their combined power made them essentially unstoppable. Sephiroth's precision and overwhelming skill, Genesis's magical prowess and tactical cunning, and Angeal's strength and honor created a synergy that made them perhaps the most dangerous combat unit ever assembled. It was during this period that Sephiroth's reputation truly solidified. Stories of his exploits spread throughout the world. There was the mission where he single-handedly eliminated an entire battalion of enemy soldiers without sustaining a single injury. There was the time he prevented a Mako reactor meltdown through quick thinking and precise action, saving thousands of lives. There were countless smaller missions, each adding to the legend. To the public, Sephiroth became more than a warrior. He became a symbol. He represented Shinra's strength, the reward for technological progress, the future of humanity enhanced and perfected through science. Propaganda posters featured his distinctive silhouette, the long silver hair, the impossibly long sword, the intimidating presence. He was, in effect, the face of Shinra's military might. But the crowning achievement of Sephiroth's career, the event that would cement his status as the greatest warrior of his generation, was his role in the Wutai War. This conflict, which raged for several years, pitted Shinra against the nation of Wutai, one of the last independent nations refusing to submit to Shinra's control and refusing to allow Mako reactors to be built on their land. Wutai was a nation of warriors with a proud military tradition, and they fought fiercely against Shinra's attempts at domination. For a time, it appeared that the war might actually result in Shinra's defeat, or at least a costly stalemate. Then Sephiroth was deployed to the front lines. The details of Sephiroth's actions during the Wutai War have taken on an almost mythical quality. Stories tell of him appearing on the battlefield like a ghost, his silver hair flowing behind him as he moved through enemy formations with lethal grace. His Masamune was said to sing as it cut through the air, a whisper of death that claimed lives with surgical precision. Entire battalions would break and flee at the news that Sephiroth was on the battlefield. Enemy commanders found their strategies useless against a warrior who could outthink them and outfight their entire forces simultaneously. The war, which had been grinding toward a potential stalemate, suddenly shifted decisively in Shinra's favor. One particular incident from the Wutai War has become legendary, though like many stories about Sephiroth, the details are difficult to verify. It's said that Sephiroth was ambushed by 100 of Wutai's finest warriors in a narrow mountain pass, a perfect trap that should have resulted in his death or capture. Instead, Sephiroth emerged from the pass alone, without a single injury, while the 100 warriors never reported back. Whether this story is true, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated is unclear, but it circulated widely and added to Sephiroth's mystique. He was not merely strong, he was unstoppable, perhaps even unkillable. The Wutai War ended with Shinra's victory, and Sephiroth received much of the credit. He had been the decisive factor, the warrior whose presence on the battlefield had turned the tide. For Shinra, this was a triumph. Their greatest weapon had proven its value on the world stage. For Sephiroth himself, the victory was more complex. He had fulfilled his role, accomplished what was asked of him, but there's a suggestion in later materials that he was beginning to question the nature of his existence. He fought brilliantly, but he fought for Shinra's ambitions, not his own. He was celebrated, but celebrated as a weapon, not as a person. The seeds of discontent, though not yet fully formed, may have already been taking root. Young Cloud Strife, watching coverage of the Wutai War from his small village of Nibelheim, saw only the legend. He saw the silver-haired warrior who embodied everything Cloud wanted to be: strong, respected, capable of protecting those he cared about. Cloud dreamed of joining Soldier, of becoming like Sephiroth, of returning to Nibelheim as a hero. He made a promise to Tifa Lockhart, his childhood friend, that he would become a famous soldier and would come to her aid if she ever needed him. That promise, and Cloud's admiration for Sephiroth, would eventually draw him to Midgar, where he would enlist in Shinra's military, hoping to be selected for the soldier program. He would fail that selection, becoming instead a regular infantryman, a fact that would haunt him and ultimately become entangled with Sephiroth's own fate in ways neither could predict. But all of that still lay in the future. For now, Sephiroth stood at the peak of his career. He was the most famous warrior in the world, the hero who had won the war, the living embodiment of human potential enhanced by science. Shinra had never been more powerful, and Sephiroth was the symbol of that power. He was approximately 25 years old, in the prime of his physical and mental capabilities, seemingly invincible. If his life had ended at this point, he would have been remembered as one of history's greatest heroes. Statues would have been erected in his honor. His name would have been spoken with reverence for generations. Instead, Sephiroth's story was about to take a catastrophic turn. Because Genesis Rhapsodos, the warrior who had always stood in Sephiroth's shadow, was about to make a discovery that would shatter everything. Genesis's cells were degrading, a side effect of the imperfect Project G process that had created him. In his desperation to find a cure, Genesis would uncover the truth about the Jenova project, and in doing so, he would inadvertently set in motion a chain of events that would transform Sephiroth from hero to monster. A mission to Genesis's hometown of Banora would reveal disturbing truths. Genesis would defect from Shinra, taking many SOLDIER members with him. Angeal too would vanish, though for different reasons. He had learned the truth of what he was and could no longer serve Shinra knowing that truth. Sephiroth, the perfect weapon, was about to begin the journey that would lead to his transformation into something far more terrible. His reputation, his sense of identity, everything he believed about himself was built on a foundation of carefully maintained lies. And that foundation was starting to crack. The hero's fall had not yet begun, but the pieces were moving into position. Soon, Sephiroth would be sent to Nibelheim to investigate problems at the Mako reactor on Mount Nibel. He would be accompanied by a young soldier named Zack Fair and supported by a squad of infantry soldiers, one of whom wore his helmet low to hide his face, ashamed of having failed to make soldier. And in Nibelheim, in the reactor and in the mansion, Sephiroth would find the reports that would destroy him. The legend was at its peak. Its fall would be all the more catastrophic for how high it had climbed. The mission to Nibelheim should have been routine, a minor assignment for someone of Sephiroth's caliber. There were problems at the Mako reactor on Mount Nibel, increased monster activity, malfunctions with the equipment, the kind of issues that arose periodically with Shinra's energy infrastructure. The company wanted its best warriors to investigate and resolve the situation quickly. Sephiroth was assigned to lead the mission, accompanied by Zack Fair, a young soldier first class with infectious enthusiasm and a strong sense of right and wrong, and supported by a small squad of infantry soldiers. Among these soldiers was Cloud Strife, the young man from Nibelheim who had idolized Sephiroth but had failed to make soldier, serving instead as a grunt. Cloud wore his helmet to hide his face, ashamed to return to his hometown as anything less than the hero he had promised to become. It should have been simple. It became the turning point that would doom the world. The journey to Nibelheim was initially uneventful. Sephiroth seemed his usual self, professional, skilled, distant but not unfriendly. Zack, who had become something of a protege to Angeal and by extension somewhat familiar with Sephiroth, noted nothing unusual about his behavior. If Sephiroth was troubled by Genesis's defection and Angeal's disappearance, he didn't show it. He focused on the mission with characteristic precision. When they arrived in Nibelheim, the small mountain village welcomed them, as overwhelmed by Sephiroth's presence as Cloud had once been by his legend. Tifa Lockhart, Cloud's childhood friend, served as their guide, though she didn't recognize Cloud behind his helmet, or perhaps he hid too well, too ashamed to reveal himself. The group climbed Mount Nibel toward the reactor, battling monsters along the way. Sephiroth's combat prowess was on full display, his movements a lethal dance that made even the most dangerous creatures seem slow and clumsy by comparison. They reached the reactor without significant difficulty, and the investigation began. What they found would change everything. Inside the reactor, in sealed chambers deep within the facility, were pods containing humanoid creatures suspended in Mako. These were failed experiments, humans who had been exposed to intense Mako treatment and had transformed into something monstrous. The sight disturbed even the hardened warriors. But what truly shattered Sephiroth was a specific pod, one labeled with a name he recognized, Jenova. Sephiroth had been told his mother was named Jenova and that she had died in childbirth. Now he stood before a pod containing what appeared to be a gray-skinned humanoid creature with long silver hair not unlike his own. Suspended in a liquid that resembled the Mako coursing through the reactor, the connection seemed obvious, though terribly wrong. If this was Jenova, then what did that make him? The implications began gnawing at Sephiroth's composure. He completed the mission mechanically, ensuring the reactor was stabilized, but his mind was clearly elsewhere. Zack noticed the change immediately. Sephiroth had become withdrawn, almost absent, as though confronting a truth too large to process. After returning to Nibelheim, Sephiroth isolated himself in the Shinra Mansion, the abandoned facility on the edge of town where the Jenova project had been conducted decades earlier. The mansion's basement contained a library filled with research reports, documentation of experiments that should never have been allowed, records of atrocities committed in the name of scientific progress. Sephiroth barricaded himself in that basement and began reading. For days, he pored over the reports, piecing together the fragments of his existence, discovering the truth about the Jenova project, about Professor Hojo, about what had been done to create him. Zack tried to check on him several times, finding Sephiroth increasingly disheveled, increasingly manic, muttering to himself about the ancients, about Jenova, about his true nature. The reports told a story, but it was a story filtered through Shinra's misconceptions. The documents stated that Jenova was an ancient, a Cetra, the last of a race that had once communed with the planet. They described how Jenova's cells had been used to create a hybrid, a human-ancient fusion that would possess the Cetra's powers. Sephiroth read these reports and drew conclusions. Conclusions that were tragically, catastrophically wrong, but which seemed to fit the evidence before him. If Jenova was an ancient, and he had been created from Jenova's cells, then he was the son of an ancient. More than that, he might be the last true heir of the Cetra, the rightful ruler of a world that had been stolen from his people by normal humans. Ghast's later research, which would have corrected this misunderstanding, was not present in the mansion's library. The tapes that Ifalna had made with Ghast, explaining that Jenova was not an ancient, but rather a calamity from space, a parasite that had nearly destroyed the Cetra, were stored elsewhere. Sephiroth had no access to this vital information. All he had were the flawed initial reports, the ones written when Shinra scientists still believed they were working with ancient DNA. And so Sephiroth's understanding of his nature was built on a foundation of misinformation. He believed himself to be something he was not, and that false belief, combined with the trauma of learning he had been created as an experiment, turned his psychology toward madness. The transformation was not instantaneous. For 7 days, Sephiroth remained in the mansion's basement, reading, thinking, his grip on sanity eroding with each passing hour. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating. He became fixated on a narrative that he constructed from the fragmented evidence before him, that he was the rightful heir to the planet, that normal humans were traitors who had betrayed the ancients, that his mother, Jenova, had been wronged, imprisoned, experimented upon. In his deteriorating mental state, Sephiroth began to conflate himself with Jenova, to see her suffering as his own, to view her imprisonment as a crime that demanded vengeance. On the 7th day, Sephiroth emerged from the mansion, but the man who emerged was not the same one who had entered. The change was visible in his eyes, in his posture, in the way he carried himself. Where before there had been discipline and control, now there was something wild, something that had been carefully restrained for decades and had finally broken free. When Zack encountered him, Sephiroth spoke in riddles, quoted the research he had read, talked about the ancients and humanity's betrayal. He seemed to be constructing a narrative, a justification for something terrible. And then, as dawn broke over Nibelheim, Sephiroth began his transformation from hero to monster. The fire started at the village's edge and spread quickly, consuming the wooden buildings with terrifying speed. Sephiroth walked through the flames, the Masamune held loosely in one hand, cutting down anyone who tried to flee or fight back. He was no longer the precise warrior who had won the Wutai War. He was something far more terrifying, a force of nature given human form, utterly convinced of his righteousness, seeing the villagers not as people but as parasites that needed to be purged. Tifa's father, the village guide, tried to stop him and died on Sephiroth's blade. Others met similar fates. The hero of the Wutai War had become Nibelheim's destroyer, and there seemed to be nothing that could stop him. Cloud found Tifa lying wounded in the reactor, Sephiroth's blade having struck her down when she attempted to avenge her father. Rage and desperation drove Cloud to confront Sephiroth, this man he had once idolized, this hero who had become a monster. In the reactor, Sephiroth had retrieved Jenova's head, severing it from the pod that had held her for so many years. He spoke to it as though it were his mother, made promises of revenge, talked about reclaiming their kingdom. When Zack tried to stop him, Sephiroth cut him down, leaving the young soldier severely wounded. Cloud, just an infantry soldier with none of Soldier's enhancements, should have been no threat. But grief and anger can grant their own kind of strength. The exact details of what happened next have been distorted by Cloud's fractured memory and Zack's later accounts. But the core truth is this. Cloud, armed with Zack's Buster sword, confronted Sephiroth in the reactor's chamber. Sephiroth was wounded, perhaps distracted by his communion with Jenova, perhaps underestimating the threat posed by a common soldier. Cloud managed to strike him, to lift Sephiroth with desperate strength and hurl him into the reactor's Mako pit below. As Sephiroth fell, still clutching Jenova's head, he plunged into the life stream that flowed beneath the reactor. For a moment, it seemed that the nightmare was over, that Sephiroth had been killed, that the crisis had been averted. But Sephiroth did not die in that Mako pit. Instead, he transformed. Falling into the life stream with Jenova's head in his arms, Jenova's cells still active within his body, Sephiroth's consciousness did not dissolve as it should have. The life stream is the collective consciousness of all who have lived and died on the planet, a river of souls and memories. For most people, falling into it would mean dissolution, their individual identity overwhelmed by the collective. But Sephiroth was not most people. His will was extraordinarily strong, his sense of self unshakable even in insanity. More critically, he carried Jenova's cells, and those cells had a directive: to reunite with other parts of Jenova, to reassemble the entity that had nearly destroyed the planet 2,000 years prior. In the livestream, Sephiroth's will interacted with Jenova's cellular imperative and created something unprecedented. Rather than Jenova's instinct controlling Sephiroth, as Professor Hojo's reunion theory predicted would happen with all who carried her cells, Sephiroth's powerful consciousness overpowered Jenova's will. He took control of her cells, bending them to his purpose rather than following their directive. In essence, Sephiroth became Jenova's master, able to manipulate all cells descended from her, including those in the soldier members and in his own experimental subjects. This gave him a terrifying power: the ability to control or influence anyone with Jenova's cells in their body, turning them into puppets or conduits for his will. Moreover, floating in the livestream, Sephiroth gained access to all the knowledge it contained. Every memory, every piece of information gathered over thousands of years. He learned that Jenova was not an ancient, that the Cetra had opposed her, that his entire identity as the last heir of the ancients was a lie built on Shinra's misconceptions. This revelation might have humbled him, might have broken his obsession. Instead, it refined his purpose with terrible clarity. If he was not an ancient, then he would become something greater than the ancients. If the planet had rejected Jenova, then he would force the planet to serve him. He would wound the planet so deeply that all its energy would rush to the injury to heal it, and he would position himself at the center of that wound, absorbing the livestream's power and becoming a god. The mechanics of this plan were gleaned from the livestream's knowledge. Sephiroth learned about Meteor, the ultimate black magic, the spell contained within the black materia. Meteor would summon a massive celestial body to crash into the planet, creating a wound more severe than even Jenova's original impact. The planet would gather all its energy to heal this catastrophic injury, and Sephiroth would merge with that energy at the point of impact. He would absorb the livestream, the very essence of the planet itself, and transcend his physical form. No longer limited by a body, no longer bound by mortal constraints, Sephiroth would become a cosmic being, capable of traveling through space in search of other planets to consume. He would become the very thing Jenova had been, a calamity from the skies, drifting through the cosmos, feeding on worlds. This plan required time. Sephiroth's physical body needed to heal and prepare. He created a crystalline shell around himself in the northern crater, the site where Jenova had first impacted the planet, where the world's energy still gathered in an attempt to heal that ancient wound. There, protected and hidden, Sephiroth would wait, drawing power from the livestream while his consciousness moved through the world using Jenova's cells as a medium. The creature that Cloud and his party would chase across the planet, what they believed to be Sephiroth, was actually Jenova's body being puppeted by Sephiroth's will. Every appearance of Sephiroth before the northern crater was actually Jenova under his control, her shape-shifting abilities allowing her to perfectly mimic his appearance. This distinction is crucial to understanding the plot of Final Fantasy VII. The Sephiroth who kills President Shinra, who appears to Cloud in visions, who leads the party toward the black materia, all of this is Jenova's physical form, controlled remotely by the real Sephiroth, who remains encased in crystal in the northern crater. It's an elaborate puppet show, with Sephiroth pulling the strings from afar, using Jenova's cells to manipulate events and drive the plot toward his ultimate goal. The party doesn't understand this until much later, mistakenly believing they're pursuing the actual Sephiroth when they're really chasing his puppet. But before any of that could begin, in the immediate aftermath of the Nibelheim incident, there was cleanup to be done. Shinra couldn't allow the truth of what had happened to become public. A hero of Sephiroth's stature going mad and destroying a village would be a public relations catastrophe, one that would raise questions about the soldier program, about Shinra's experiments, about the Jenova project itself. So Shinra did what it always did when faced with uncomfortable truths. It buried them. Nibelheim was rebuilt, populated with Shinra employees pretending to be villagers, the real inhabitants either dead or scattered. Survivors who knew the truth were silenced or disappeared. The official story became that Nibelheim had suffered a monster attack but had been saved by Sephiroth, who unfortunately died in the process. A fabricated narrative, but one that protected Shinra's interests. Cloud and Zack, both witnesses to the truth and both having technically interfered with Shinra property, Jenova's head, were captured by Shinra troops. Professor Hojo, eager for new test subjects and curious about what had happened to his greatest creation, decided to use them in experiments. For nearly 5 years, Cloud and Zack were imprisoned in the Shinra mansion's basement, the same place where Sephiroth had learned the truth of his existence. They were injected with Jenova's cells, submerged in Mako, turned into test subjects for Hojo's reunion theory. The hypothesis that those with Jenova's cells would feel an irresistible urge to return to the main body. Zack, who had already received soldier enhancements, was relatively resistant to the experiments. Cloud, who had no such enhancements, suffered terribly, his mind fracturing under the combination of trauma, Mako poisoning, and cellular manipulation. Eventually, Zack's conditioning failed, and he broke free, taking the catatonic Cloud with him. For nearly a year, Zack dragged Cloud across the continent, trying to reach Midgar, evading Shinra forces, hoping that Cloud would recover. He never did, at least not then. Just outside Midgar, Shinra troops finally caught up to them. Zack fought with everything he had, taking on an entire army to protect his friend. He killed many of them, but there were too many, and eventually they cut him down. As he lay dying, Zack gave Cloud the Buster Sword, told him to be his living legacy, and passed away. Cloud, still mostly catatonic, absorbed Zack's memories and personality traits, mixed them with his own broken psyche and the fragments he had absorbed from Sephiroth through Jenova's cells, and constructed a false identity. A version of himself that had made it into soldier, that was strong and confident, that was the hero he had always wanted to be. This false Cloud would eventually make his way to Midgar, where he would be recruited by Avalanche, where he would meet Aerith and Tifa again, where he would be drawn into a conflict with Shinra that would ultimately lead him to confront Sephiroth. But that confrontation would not be with the man who burned Nibelheim. It would be with something far more terrifying, a being who had transcended humanity, who had mastered death itself, who sought nothing less than godhood. The Sephiroth who fell into the lifestream was a broken man, driven mad by false revelations. The Sephiroth who emerged 5 years later was something far worse, a calculated, patient entity with cosmic ambitions and the power to achieve them. Nibelheim marked the death of Sephiroth, the hero, and the birth of Sephiroth, the god-aspiring monster. Everything that followed, the manipulation of Cloud, the quest for the black materia, the summoning of Meteor, the final confrontation in the northern crater, all of it traced back to those 7 days in the Shinra mansion basement, to the moment when a perfect warrior learned he was a manufactured being, to the psychological break that transformed admiration into contempt, duty into vengeance, and purpose into apocalyptic ambition. The world had created its greatest hero. Now it would face the consequences of that creation. Now it would discover what happens when you forge a weapon that can think for itself and then give it reason to turn that blade against everything and everyone. Nibelheim burned, and in those flames, so did any hope that Sephiroth could be reasoned with, redeemed, or stopped by anything short of total opposition. The hero had fallen, the monster had awakened, and the world would never be the same. For 5 years, the world believed Sephiroth was dead. Shinra's official reports claimed he had perished while defending Nibelheim from a monster attack. A hero's death for humanity's greatest warrior. Memorial services were held, his image remained on propaganda posters, now with the added weight of martyrdom. Young men still dreamed of joining Soldier, of living up to Sephiroth's legacy. But beneath the northern crater, suspended in crystalline Mako, at the exact point where Jenova had crashed into the planet 2,000 years prior, Sephiroth was very much alive. Or perhaps alive is not quite the right word for what he had become. The life stream is not simply energy, it is consciousness itself, the collected memories and experiences of every being that has ever lived on the planet. When someone dies, their spirit energy returns to the life stream, carrying with it everything they knew, felt, and experienced. This accumulated knowledge becomes part of the planetary consciousness, a vast library of existence that flows beneath the surface of the world. For ordinary people, immersion in the life stream means dissolution. The individual consciousness, overwhelmed by the infinite chorus of all other consciousnesses, simply ceases to maintain its boundaries and merges into the collective. It is not painful, but it is absolute. The person who was becomes part of the greater whole. Sephiroth should have experienced this dissolution when he fell into the reactor's Mako pit. His body should have died, his consciousness should have scattered into the life stream, and perhaps fragments of his memories would have remained. Ghost stories about a warrior who went mad, cautionary tales absorbed into the planet's collective knowledge. But Sephiroth was not ordinary, and several factors conspired to prevent his dissolution. First, his will was extraordinarily powerful, forged through decades of discipline and sharpened by the absolute conviction of his madness. He believed himself to be the rightful heir to the planet, believed it with such intensity that this belief became unshakable even in the face of the lifestream's overwhelming presence. Second, Sephiroth carried Jenova's cells throughout his body, cells that had been integrated with his DNA before birth. Jenova was not native to the planet, not part of its natural cycle of life and death. Her cells contained their own imperative, their own instinct, to reunite, to reform, to continue the work of planetary destruction that the Cetra had interrupted 2,000 years ago. These cells were not subject to the lifestream's dissolution in the same way human cells were. They remained distinct, separate, maintaining their structure and purpose even when surrounded by the planet's spirit energy. And because Sephiroth's body was suffused with these cells, because they were the foundation of his enhanced physiology, they served as an anchor, preventing his complete dissolution. Third, and perhaps most importantly, Professor Hojo's theory, the reunion theory, provided a mechanism for Sephiroth's survival. Hojo had hypothesized that Jenova's cells, when separated, would instinctively attempt to reunite with the main body. He had tested this theory by injecting Cloud and Zack with Jenova's cells, believing that they would be drawn to Jenova's head that Sephiroth had taken into the lifestream. But what Hojo hadn't anticipated was that Sephiroth's will would be strong enough to override Jenova's instinct. In the lifestream, surrounded by Jenova's cells that had been part of his body, and the consciousness of Jenova herself, Sephiroth did not become Jenova's puppet. Instead, he became her master. The battle of wills between Sephiroth and Jenova, if it can be called a battle when one participant is merely following instinct while the other exercises conscious purpose, was decisive. Sephiroth's consciousness, his sense of self, his determination to achieve his goals, all proved stronger than Jenova's ancient programming. He seized control of her cells, bending them to his purpose, turning the alien entity that had nearly destroyed the planet into his tool. This was unprecedented. Jenova had infected countless beings over the millennia since her arrival, had transformed Cetra into monsters, had spread her influence like a plague. But none had ever dominated her as Sephiroth did. He took the parasite that should have controlled him and made it his puppet. With this control came power. Every cell derived from Jenova, every person who had been injected with those cells, the soldier members, Cloud and Zack, anyone exposed during Hojo's experiments, all carried fragments of what was now Sephiroth's network. He could sense them, influence them, in some cases outright control them. This gave him eyes and ears throughout the world, the ability to perceive events far from his physical location, the capacity to manipulate his clones like chess pieces on a board. The reunion theory was real, but not in the way Hojo had imagined. The cells weren't being drawn to Jenova, they were being drawn to Sephiroth, and he could direct that pull according to his will. But even more valuable than this network of influence was the knowledge Sephiroth gained from the lifestream itself. Floating in that river of consciousness, he had access to the accumulated wisdom of the planet, every secret, every hidden truth, every piece of information gathered over thousands of years. He learned the true nature of the ancients, the Cetra who had cultivated life on the planet and communed with it directly. He learned about their relationship with the lifestream, how they could speak with the planet and understand its needs. He learned about Jenova's arrival and the war against the calamity from the skies, how the Cetra had sacrificed themselves to seal away the alien threat. This knowledge should have shattered Sephiroth's delusions. He now understood that Jenova was not an ancient, that his belief in being the last heir of the Cetra was built on Shinra's mistaken identification of Jenova's remains. He knew that the ancients had opposed Jenova, that they would have viewed him not as their descendant, but as an abomination, a fusion of human and alien DNA that represented everything they had fought against. The narrative he had constructed in the Shinra mansion basement, the justification for his rage and his destruction of Nibelheim, was revealed as false. He was not reclaiming his birthright. He was not avenging his people. He was simply the product of unethical experimentation, a weapon that had turned on its creators. Another person might have been humbled by this revelation. Another person might have experienced remorse, might have recognized the horror of what they had done and sought some form of redemption or at least cessation of violence. But Sephiroth was not capable of such a transformation. The madness that had driven him to burn Nibelheim had evolved during his time in the lifestream into something colder, more calculated, but no less absolute. If he was not an ancient, then he would become something greater than the ancients. If the planet had rejected Jenova, then he would force the planet to serve him. If he had been created as a weapon, then he would wield himself with devastating effect, but toward his own goals rather than Shinra's. The knowledge in the livestream showed Sephiroth exactly how to achieve his transformation. He learned about the black materia, the crystallized negative energy of the planet that contained the ultimate destructive magic, Meteor. This spell, when activated, would summon a massive celestial body to collide with the planet, creating a wound more catastrophic than even Jenova's impact had been. The planet's survival instinct would trigger, and all of the lifestream's energy would rush to the point of impact, attempting to heal the grievous injury. This was the planet's natural response to trauma, the same mechanism that had kept the northern crater frozen for 2,000 years, energy constantly gathering there to heal the ancient wound. Sephiroth's plan was elegant in its terrible simplicity. He would summon Meteor using the black materia. The celestial body would strike the planet at the northern crater, exactly where he waited in crystalline suspension. When the lifestream rushed to that point, gathering all the planet's energy in one concentrated location, Sephiroth would absorb it. He would merge with the totality of the planet's consciousness, consuming thousands of years of accumulated knowledge and power. His individual consciousness would expand to encompass the entire planetary system. He would become, in effect, a god, not in the metaphorical sense of a powerful being, but in the literal sense of a consciousness that encompassed and controlled an entire world. But this was only the first step in Sephiroth's ultimate ambition. Once he had absorbed the planet's lifestream, he would use that energy to propel himself into space, riding the dying world like a vessel through the cosmos. He would seek out other planets, other living worlds with their own life streams, and repeat the process. He would become a cosmic entity, drifting through space, feeding on worlds, growing ever more powerful with each planetary system he consumed. He would become what Jenova had been, a calamity from the skies, but one with conscious purpose and godlike power. He would be eternal, unstoppable, transcendent. This plan required patience. Sephiroth's physical body needed time to heal from the injuries it had sustained in Nibelheim, time to prepare for the transformation that would come when he absorbed the lifestream. So he created a crystalline shell around himself, a protective barrier formed from condensed Mako that would shield him while he gathered strength. The northern crater was the perfect location for this preparation. It was isolated, difficult to access, and it was already a focal point for the planet's energy. Here, at the site of Jenova's impact, Sephiroth would wait for the moment when he could complete his ascension. But waiting did not mean inaction. While his physical body remained suspended in the northern crater, Sephiroth's consciousness was free to act through his network of Jenova cells. He could project his awareness through any person or creature that carried those cells, seeing through their eyes, speaking through their mouths, controlling their actions. Most powerfully, he could manipulate Jenova's actual body, or what remained of it. Jenova's head, which he had carried with him when he fell into the lifestream, and the rest of her body, which had been transported to Shinra headquarters in Midgar, were directly under his control. Jenova's shape-shifting abilities, combined with Sephiroth's intelligence and will, allowed him to create a perfect simulacrum of himself, indistinguishable from the real thing to those who encountered it. This is what Cloud and his companions would chase throughout their journey, not Sephiroth himself, but Jenova's body puppeted by Sephiroth's will. Every appearance of Sephiroth before the northern crater was this puppet, this shell wearing his face and mimicking his mannerisms, carrying out his plans while the real Sephiroth remained safely hidden. It was an elegant solution to the problem of acting in the world while remaining protected. Sephiroth could be in multiple places at once, could appear and disappear at will, could influence events without risking his physical form. And because Jenova could perfectly replicate his appearance, no one suspected they were fighting a puppet rather than the man himself. During these 5 years of transformation and preparation, Sephiroth also refined his understanding of Cloud's strife. Through the Jenova cells in Cloud's body, Sephiroth had access to his memories, his fears, his traumas. He understood that Cloud's psyche had fractured under the combined weight of Mako poisoning, Hojo's experiments, and the trauma of Nibelheim. He understood that Cloud had constructed a false identity, believing himself to be a soldier first class when he was actually an infantryman who had failed the selection process. More importantly, Sephiroth recognized that Cloud could be manipulated, that the Jenova cells in his body made him susceptible to Sephiroth's influence, that with the right pressure at the right moments, Cloud could be turned into an unwitting puppet who would serve Sephiroth's purposes. This recognition would prove crucial to Sephiroth's plan. The black materia was sealed in the Temple of the Ancients, protected by ancient Cetra magic that only one with ancient blood could bypass. Sephiroth himself could not retrieve it. Though he commanded Jenova's cells, he was not truly a Cetra, and the protections would recognize this. He needed someone who could enter the temple, navigate its defenses, and bring him the black materia. And who better than Cloud Strife, the man who had defeated him at Nibelheim, who carried both guilt over that encounter and the false memory of being a soldier, who believed himself strong enough to oppose Sephiroth, but was actually connected to him through Jenova's cells. Sephiroth would use Cloud as his retrieval system. He would manipulate him, guide him, push him toward the temple, and at the crucial moment, he would exert control and force Cloud to hand over the black materia. It was a plan that required precise timing and manipulation, but Sephiroth had 5 years to prepare. 5 years to study Cloud through their shared connection, 5 years to understand exactly which psychological pressure points would break his resistance. The puppet would not even understand it was a puppet until it was too late. And by then, Meteor would be summoned, the world would be doomed, and Sephiroth would be on the verge of godhood. As his 5th year in the lifestream drew to a close, Sephiroth sensed changes in the world above. Shinra's grip on power was strong, but there were rebels. Avalanche, an eco-terrorist group that opposed Mako extraction and sought to stop Shinra's draining of the planet's life force. More specifically, he sensed Cloud Strife emerging from his catatonic state, beginning to operate as a mercenary, being drawn into conflict with Shinra. The pieces were moving into position. Soon, Cloud would be caught up in events that would lead him to learn about Sephiroth's supposed return. Soon, Cloud would begin the chase that would take him and his companions across the world, following a trail of clues and bodies, pursuing what they believed to be Sephiroth, but was actually his puppet. Sephiroth's first move was to trigger the events that would set everything in motion. Using his control over Jenova's body, held in Shinra headquarters, he orchestrated a breakout. The creature that appeared to be Sephiroth massacred Shinra personnel, killed President Shinra himself, and escaped with Jenova's remains. This act served multiple purposes. It announced Sephiroth's return to the world, creating panic and drawing attention. It removed President Shinra, whose competent leadership might have organized an effective response. And it freed Jenova's body from containment, allowing Sephiroth to use it more freely in his manipulations. Cloud, investigating Shinra headquarters with his Avalanche allies, witnessed the aftermath. The trail of destruction, the impaled president, the clear signs that something impossibly powerful had torn through the building's security. He also experienced something else, a strange sensation, a pulling at his consciousness, a feeling that he needed to follow this trail, to pursue this enemy. He didn't understand that this was the Jenova cells in his body responding to Sephiroth's call, the first stirrings of the manipulation that would eventually lead to his complete control. Cloud simply knew that he had to chase Sephiroth, had to stop him, had to prevent whatever the legendary warrior was planning. The hunt had begun, and neither Cloud nor any of his companions understood that they were not the hunters but the prey, not pursuing Sephiroth but being drawn exactly where he wanted them to go. For 5 years, Sephiroth had waited, suspended in crystal, transforming from a mad warrior into something far more dangerous, a calculating entity with a clear goal and the power to achieve it. He had mastered Jenova, gained knowledge from the lifestream, identified his tools and obstacles, and formulated a plan that would transform him from weapon to god. The world believed him dead, but death had been merely a transition, a necessary transformation that stripped away his mortality and prepared him for ascension. Now the time had come to set his plan in motion. Now the puppets would dance, the world would burn, and at the end of it all, Sephiroth would stand triumphant, no longer human, no longer limited, but divine. The 5 years of preparation were complete. The end of the world could begin. The story that Cloud Strife tells himself, the narrative he believes about his past and his purpose, is a comfortable lie. He believes he joined Soldier and made first class. He believes he was present at Nibelheim as a soldier operative working alongside Sephiroth and Zack. He believes that when Sephiroth went mad, it was Cloud who stopped him, who defeated the legendary warrior and saved the day. These beliefs give Cloud confidence, give him an identity as someone strong and capable, someone worthy of being called a hero. But every word of this personal history is false, and Sephiroth knows it. More than that, Sephiroth weaponizes it, using Cloud's fractured psyche and false memories as tools in his grand design. The journey that Cloud undertakes with his companions, Tifa Lockhart, Barrett Wallace, Aerith Gainsborough, and others who join along the way, is ostensibly a pursuit. They are chasing Sephiroth, trying to stop whatever plan he's enacting, following a trail of clues and destruction across the world. But the truth is more sinister. They are not pursuing Sephiroth. Sephiroth is leading them. Every appearance of the silver-haired warrior, every cryptic message, every confrontation is carefully orchestrated to push them in a specific direction toward a specific goal. And Cloud, who believes himself to be Sephiroth's opponent, is actually the linchpin of the entire plan, the puppet who will deliver exactly what Sephiroth needs at the crucial moment. The mechanism of this control is the Jenova cells that permeate Cloud's body, implanted during Hojo's experiments in the Shinra mansion. These cells create a connection between Cloud and Sephiroth, a biological network through which Sephiroth can exert influence. At first, this influence is subtle: feelings of unease, strange compulsions, momentary disorientation. Cloud experiences headaches and blackouts, moments where time seems to skip, and he finds himself in different places with no memory of how he got there. His companions notice these episodes but attribute them to stress or trauma. They don't understand that during these blackouts, Cloud is being controlled, his body moving according to Sephiroth's will rather than his own. The Jenova cells also allow Sephiroth to appear directly to Cloud, creating visions and hallucinations that only Cloud can see. These appearances serve multiple purposes. They remind Cloud of Sephiroth's presence, keeping him focused on the pursuit. They plant suggestions and ideas that will shape Cloud's decisions at crucial moments. And they undermine Cloud's confidence in his own perceptions, creating psychological instability that will make him easier to control when the time comes for complete manipulation. When Sephiroth appears to Cloud in visions, speaking of reunion and destiny, when he challenges Cloud's understanding of reality and memory, he is not simply taunting his opponent, he is conducting psychological warfare, preparing Cloud's mind for the moment when it will be fully under his control. The other tool in Sephiroth's manipulation is the Jenova body itself, the puppet he controls to interact with the physical world. This creature, wearing Sephiroth's face and wielding his Masamune, appears at key locations throughout the journey, always just ahead of the party, always leaving clues about where to go next. At Junon, Sephiroth is spotted boarding a ship, drawing the party to pursue. At Costa del Sol, rumors of his presence push them to continue the chase. In Nibelheim, rebuilt and populated by Shinra actors pretending to be villagers, they find evidence of his passage and clues pointing toward further destinations. Each encounter is designed to maintain forward momentum, to keep the party moving toward Sephiroth's true goal. During these encounters, the party occasionally confronts what they believe to be Sephiroth, only to discover they're actually fighting Jenova in one of her various forms. Jenova Birth, Jenova Life, Jenova Death. These battles are tests, ways for Sephiroth to gauge the party's strength and to leave behind Jenova's cells, which detach during combat and can potentially infect new hosts. Each form of Jenova represents a different aspect of her alien nature, her ability to mimic life, to create life, and to bring death. The party defeats these forms, believing they're making progress against Sephiroth, not understanding that these are merely shed skins, pieces of a larger entity that Sephiroth controls from afar. Victory in these battles gives them false confidence, makes them believe they have a chance against Sephiroth himself, when in reality they're playing exactly into his hands. The first major milestone in Sephiroth's plan comes at the Temple of the Ancients, a structure created by the Cetra that exists partially outside normal space and time. This temple houses the black materia, the crystallized negative energy that contains the spell for Meteor. The temple itself is a puzzle, a maze of shifting architecture and ancient guardian creatures designed to prevent anyone unworthy from reaching the materia at its heart. The Cetra who built it intended it to be a final failsafe, a way to ensure that the most destructive magic ever conceived could never be used. They didn't anticipate Sephiroth, a being who could manipulate one who carried Cetra blood to do his bidding. Aerith Gainsborough, the last surviving Cetra, accompanies the party to the Temple of the Ancients. She is there to try to understand the temple's purpose, to access the ancient knowledge contained within it, perhaps to find a way to stop Sephiroth using the wisdom of her ancestors. Her presence is crucial. The temple responds to Cetra blood, opens its secrets to those descended from the ancients. But Aerith is not the only one with a connection to the temple. Cloud, carrying Jenova's cells, which the temple's ancient defenses mistake for Cetra cells due to Shinra's original misidentification of Jenova, can also navigate the temple's protections. And Sephiroth can control Cloud. The party works its way through the temple, solving puzzles, defeating guardians, piecing together the truth about the black materia. They learn that the temple itself is the black materia, that to obtain the materia, they must shrink the entire structure down to a size that can be carried. It's a revelation that should give them pause. If the materia is this dangerous, perhaps it shouldn't be retrieved at all. But the decision is made to obtain it, to keep it from Sephiroth, to ensure he cannot use it to summon Meteor. They don't understand that by retrieving it, they're doing exactly what Sephiroth wants, that he has no ability to retrieve it himself and needs them to do it for him. When the temple is condensed into the black materia, a dark crystalline stone the size of a softball, Cloud takes possession of it. At this moment, Sephiroth could potentially seize control and simply take it. But he doesn't, not yet. He needs Cloud to carry the materia somewhere specific, to the northern crater, to the place where Sephiroth's physical body waits. So instead of taking control immediately, Sephiroth applies psychological pressure. He appears to Cloud in a vision, tells him about the coming reunion, suggests that Cloud hand over the materia voluntarily. Cloud resists, his will fighting against the compulsion, but the seed is planted. The suggestion echoes in his mind, weakening his resistance for the moment when Sephiroth will exert full control. Recognizing that Cloud is compromised, that the Jenova cells make him a liability, the party makes a decision. They give the black materia to someone they trust, someone without Jenova cells who cannot be controlled by Sephiroth. The specific person varies depending on player choices, but the result is the same. The materia is placed in the hands of someone the party believes is safe from Sephiroth's influence. It's a reasonable precaution, a smart tactical decision. It also proves completely futile because they don't understand the extent of Sephiroth's control over Cloud or what he's willing to do to retrieve the materia. The next crucial location on the journey is the Forgotten City, also called the Forgotten Capital, a structure built by the Cetra before their near extinction. This beautiful crystalline place, constructed from shells and organic materials in a way that seems to grow rather than be built, is the last remnant of the ancient civilization. It's also where Aerith goes, drawn by a sense that she needs to be there, that the answers to stopping Sephiroth lie in this place of her ancestors. She descends into the city's depths alone, to a structure that rises from a pool of crystal-clear water, to pray, to attempt to call forth holy, the ultimate white magic, the counterbalance to Meteor, the only force that can prevent the destruction Sephiroth plans. Aerith's plan is sound. Holy is contained within the white materia, which she has carried since childhood, inherited from her mother Ifalna. If she can activate it before Meteor is summoned, if she can call forth Holy and position it to counteract the destructive spell, then Sephiroth's plan will fail. The planet will be protected. The world will survive. It's a race. Can Aerith activate Holy before Sephiroth obtains the black materia and summons Meteor? The answer, tragically, is no. Because while Aerith prays in the Forgotten City, while she opens herself to the planet and attempts to commune with the lifestream as her ancestors once did, Sephiroth enacts his masterstroke of manipulation. Cloud descends into the Forgotten City, drawn by a compulsion he doesn't fully understand, moving toward Aerith with mechanical purpose. His companions follow, worried about him, worried about Aerith, not yet understanding what's happening. They find Aerith praying, kneeling on a platform above the water, the white materia at her feet, her consciousness deep in communion with the planet. Cloud approaches, his hand reaching for his sword, his movements jerky and unnatural. Sephiroth's control over him is increasing, fighting Cloud's will, using the Jenova cells to override his conscious mind. The real Cloud, buried beneath layers of false memory and psychological manipulation, struggles against the compulsion, tries to stop his own body from doing what Sephiroth commands. This struggle, this battle within Cloud's own mind, creates a moment of hesitation. His hand trembles on his sword. His companions shout warnings, begin to move to intervene. For an instant, it seems like Cloud might break free from Sephiroth's control, might overcome the compulsion through sheer force of will. And then, from above, a figure descends. Sephiroth, or rather the Jenova puppet wearing his face, having waited for this exact moment. The Masamune, that impossibly long blade, extends downward and pierces through Aerith's back, emerging from her chest in a spray of blood that seems to move in slow motion as it falls into the water below. This moment, Aerith's death at Sephiroth's hands, is perhaps the most famous scene in all of Final Fantasy VII. It's shocking not just for its brutality, but for what it represents: the permanent death of a party member, someone the player has invested time and emotion into developing, someone who seemed crucial to the plot, removed from the story with casual cruelty. No resurrection spells work, no Phoenix Downs restore her, she simply dies, her body consigned to the water below, the white materia bouncing from the platform into the depths. It's a statement about the stakes of the conflict, a demonstration that Sephiroth is willing and able to kill anyone who threatens his plan, and a tactical move to remove the one person who could activate Holy. But Aerith's death serves another purpose in Sephiroth's plan. It's a trauma, a psychological wound that further destabilizes Cloud. Cloud believes himself responsible, believes that his own hands would have killed her if Sephiroth hadn't done it for him. This guilt, this horror at what he almost did, what he was being controlled to do, deepens his psychological instability. It makes him question himself, question his strength, question whether he can even trust his own actions. And this self-doubt, this fractured confidence, will make Cloud even more vulnerable when Sephiroth exerts complete control at the northern crater. With Aerith dead and unable to activate Holy, and with the white materia having sunk into the water, where it will remain inaccessible, Sephiroth has eliminated the most immediate threat to his plan. But he still needs the black materia. The party still possesses it, having entrusted it to one of their members for safekeeping. This is where Sephiroth's manipulation of Cloud reaches its culmination. Driven by a combination of guilt over Aerith's death, desire for revenge against Sephiroth, and the constant pull of the reunion instinct created by the Jenova cells, Cloud leads the party onward. They travel across the world, following clues, gathering information, eventually learning about the northern crater and Sephiroth's presence there. When they finally reach the northern crater, descending through the frozen wasteland into the depths where the world's ancient wound still festers, they find something unexpected. Not just Sephiroth, but others like Cloud. These are the Sephiroth clones, as Hojo called them, though they're not clones in the traditional sense, but rather survivors of the Nibelheim incident who were injected with Jenova cells and subjected to the reunion experiment. These individuals, driven mad by the treatment, have been drawn to the crater by the same compulsion that affects Cloud. They've gathered here, waiting for Sephiroth, compelled by the reunion instinct to return to what they perceive as the source. They shuffle about in robes, speaking in disjointed phrases, their minds shattered by what was done to them. They are a warning of what Cloud might become if he loses his battle against Sephiroth's control. Deeper in the crater, past the broken clones, the party finally confronts Sephiroth himself, or so they believe. The figure they face is still Jenova, the puppet, but it mimics Sephiroth so perfectly that none can tell the difference. And through this puppet, Sephiroth speaks to Cloud, begins the final phase of manipulation. He tells Cloud the truth, that Cloud was never in Soldier, that his memories are false, that he is simply another failed clone who has been compelled to journey here like all the others. He presents false evidence, shows Cloud the numbered tattoo that marks him as one of Hojo's experimental subjects, forces him to confront the inconsistencies in his memories. And as Cloud's sense of identity crumbles, as he loses his grip on who and what he is, Sephiroth exerts complete control. Under Sephiroth's control, Cloud does what he has been manipulated to do all along. He retrieves the black materia from whichever party member had been holding it, walking through his companions like a puppet on strings, unable to resist the compulsion. When his friends try to stop him, try to break through to him, Cloud is completely unresponsive, his consciousness suppressed beneath Sephiroth's will. He approaches Sephiroth and hands over the black materia, the act almost gentle, like a child giving a gift to a parent. Sephiroth accepts it, and with Cloud's purpose fulfilled, releases his control. Cloud collapses, his mind unable to cope with what has happened, with the revelation of his false memories and his betrayal of his companions. And then Sephiroth activates the black materia. The spell for Meteor is released, and high above the planet, in the depths of space, a massive celestial body begins to move, drawn by the magic toward its impact point. The wound that Sephiroth will use to ascend to godhood is coming, and there is nothing anyone can do to stop it. The manipulation is complete. The puppet has served its purpose. The reunion of Jenova's cells, the gathering of Sephiroth's clones, the retrieval of the black materia, all has gone according to plan. Now there is only waiting for impact, for the moment when the life stream will gather at the northern crater and Sephiroth will consume it. The party, devastated by Cloud's breakdown and the successful summoning of Meteor, has no choice but to retreat. They escape the northern crater as it begins to awaken, as massive weapons, the planet's defense mechanisms, emerge to combat the threat they perceive. Cloud, catatonic with psychological trauma, is evacuated with them, his consciousness having retreated so deep that he can barely function. They flee to a place called Madil, a small village with natural hot springs where they hope Cloud might recover. But recovery seems impossible. The revelation of his false memories, the guilt over being used to doom the world, the trauma of Aerith's death and his role in it, all of it has crushed Cloud's psyche completely. He lies in a bed, barely aware of his surroundings, occasionally muttering fragments of thoughts, but mostly just gone, his mind having surrendered to the impossibility of his situation. Meanwhile, Meteor approaches. High above, the massive celestial body grows larger each day, visible even in daylight, a harbinger of the apocalypse. Shinra, recognizing the existential threat, attempts to stop it using their Mako cannon, the sister ray, firing directly at the barrier that Sephiroth has erected around the northern crater. The attack fails to stop Meteor but succeeds in destroying the barrier, which has the unintended consequence of awakening the weapons fully. These massive biomechanical entities, creations of the planet itself designed to protect against existential threats, begin attacking anything with high concentrations of Mako energy, which means they target Shinra's facilities and Mako reactors. The world descends into chaos, caught between the approaching meteor, the rampaging weapons, and the collapse of the infrastructure that has sustained modern civilization. It appears that Sephiroth has won. Meteor approaches, his physical body waits at the northern crater to absorb the life stream. His primary opponent has been psychologically destroyed, and the world scrambles uselessly to stop forces they cannot hope to match. The puppet master has played his pieces perfectly, and the endgame approaches. But there is one element Sephiroth has not accounted for. One piece that will prove crucial to preventing his ascension. Aerith, though dead, has not ceased to act. Her consciousness, rather than dissolving into the life stream, has remained coherent, working from within the planet's spirit energy to activate Holy. And Cloud, though broken, has not been destroyed completely. His true memories, his real self, still exists buried beneath the false identity and the trauma. With help, he might recover. With time, he might become strong enough to face Sephiroth again. The puppet master's plan appears perfect, but the puppets are beginning to cut their strings. The world stands on the brink of annihilation. Meteor hangs in the sky, growing larger with each passing hour. Its trajectory locked onto the northern crater where Sephiroth waits in crystalline suspension. The planet's weapons rampage across the continents, attacking anything associated with high concentrations of Mako energy, which in practice means they're destroying Shinra facilities and decimating the infrastructure that modern society depends upon. Panic spreads through the population as people realize that something is fundamentally wrong, that the natural order has broken down, that their world is ending. And Cloud Strife, the man who Sephiroth used to doom the planet, lies catatonic in the village of Mydeal, his mind shattered by the revelation of his false memories and his manipulation into delivering the black materia. Yet even in this darkest moment, hope persists. Tifa Lockhart refuses to abandon Cloud, staying with him in Mydeal even as the rest of the party works to find some way to stop Meteor. Her devotion to Cloud is not simply romantic or nostalgic, though those elements exist. It's rooted in something deeper. Tifa knows Cloud in a way no one else does. She was there in Nibelheim during his childhood. She witnessed his departure to join Shinra. She knows the real Cloud Strife, the boy from the village who wanted to be a hero, and she knows that person still exists somewhere beneath the fractured psyche and false memories. If anyone can reach him, if anyone can help him reconstruct his identity based on truth rather than fiction, it's Tifa. The opportunity for this reconstruction comes unexpectedly through catastrophe. One of the planet's weapons attacks Mydeal, drawn by the Mako springs beneath the village. The ground fractures, and both Cloud and Tifa fall into the life stream that wells up from below. This should mean death, or at least the dissolution of their consciousness. But instead, something remarkable happens. Tifa's consciousness remains coherent, protected perhaps by her strong sense of self, or by the planet's recognition that she's trying to help Cloud. And she finds Cloud's consciousness adrift in the life stream, fragmented into pieces. His real memories mixed with false ones, his identity scattered across multiple contradictory narratives. What follows is one of the most psychologically intense sequences in Final Fantasy VII. Tifa's journey through Cloud's subconscious, helping him sort truth from fiction, real memory from implanted delusion. Together, they revisit Nibelheim, but this time seeing what actually happened rather than the false narrative Cloud has been living. They see Cloud as he truly was, not a soldier operative, but an infantry soldier, wearing his helmet low to hide his face, ashamed of having failed to make soldier. They see how Zack Fair was the actual soldier present that day, how Zack was Cloud's friend and mentor, how Zack died protecting Cloud during their escape from Shinra. They see how Cloud's mind, broken by trauma and Mako poisoning, absorbed Zack's memories and mannerisms, mixed them with his own fragmented recollections, and constructed a false identity as a coping mechanism. Most crucially, Tifa helps Cloud remember his true relationship with Sephiroth. Cloud had not been Sephiroth's colleague or equal. He had been a nobody, an infantry grunt who Sephiroth wouldn't have even noticed. But in the reactor, when Sephiroth had wounded Tifa and defeated Zack, when the legendary warrior believed himself invincible, it was Cloud, weak, unenhanced, ordinary Cloud, who had picked up Zack's sword and attacked. He had caught Sephiroth off guard, stabbed him, and with desperate strength fueled by rage and grief, had thrown the legendary warrior into the Mako pit below. Cloud was not a hero because of his strength or his training. He was a hero because in the moment when it mattered most, he had acted despite his weakness, had found courage despite his fear, had done what needed to be done, even knowing he was outmatched. This truth, painful as it is, proves liberating. Cloud was never a soldier first class, but that doesn't make him worthless. He failed to achieve his childhood dream, but he still saved his friends, still stopped Sephiroth temporarily, still proved that strength of will matters as much as physical power. His relationship with Aerith was real, even if his memories were confused. His friendship with his party members, the bonds forged over their journey together, all of that was genuine. The person Cloud had been pretending to be was a lie, but the person he had become during their adventure was real. This realization allows Cloud to reconstruct his identity on a foundation of truth, to integrate the real memories with the false ones, to understand who he actually is rather than who he pretended to be. When Cloud and Tifa emerge from the livestream, Cloud is fundamentally changed. His mannerisms are slightly different. Less cocky, more humble, but also more genuinely confident because his confidence now rests on truth rather than fiction. He understands what Sephiroth did to him, how the Jenova cells were used to manipulate him, how his fractured psyche made him vulnerable to control. And with this understanding comes immunity. Sephiroth can no longer manipulate Cloud the same way because Cloud now knows himself. The false identity that Sephiroth exploited no longer exists. The psychological pressure points that allowed for control have been mapped and diffused. Cloud is still connected to Sephiroth through the Jenova cells, but now he understands that connection and can resist it. With Cloud restored, the party regroups and formulates a plan. Meteor is coming, and nothing can stop its physical approach. But if they can defeat Sephiroth, if they can prevent him from positioning himself to absorb the livestream when it gathers at the point of impact, then his plan will fail. The wound will still occur, but Sephiroth won't be able to exploit it. And there's another element to consider, Aerith. Although she died at the Forgotten City, her consciousness has not dissipated. The party doesn't know this yet, but Aerith has been working from within the livestream to activate Holy, the counterspell to Meteor contained in the white materia. If they can stop Sephiroth, if they can prevent him from interfering with the planet's natural response to the crisis, then Holy might be able to stop or mitigate Meteor's impact. The decision is made. The party will return to the northern crater, descend to its deepest point, confront Sephiroth in his crystalline shell, and prevent his ascension to godhood. It's effectively a suicide mission. They're attacking the most powerful being on the planet in his stronghold, at the moment when he's closest to achieving ultimate power. But they have no choice. If they don't act, the world ends. If they die trying, at least they die fighting rather than waiting for annihilation. Cloud, who was manipulated into helping Sephiroth summon Meteor, will be the one to stop him. The puppet will cut his strings and face the puppet master. The descent into the northern crater is harrowing. The geography itself seems wrong, twisted, with passages that shouldn't exist and spaces that violate normal physics. This is ground zero for Jenova's impact 2,000 years ago, and the wound has never fully healed. The livestream is close to the surface here, visible through cracks in the rock, flowing like underground rivers of light and consciousness. The party battles through monsters, through Jenova synthesis, the last and most powerful form of Jenova's body before they reach Sephiroth himself. Each step takes them closer to the planet's core, closer to the place where Sephiroth waits. Finally, they reach the chamber where Sephiroth has been suspended for 5 years. He hangs in crystalline Mako, his body perfectly preserved, his eyes closed. A serene expression on his face. The Masamune is held loosely in his hand, and his single black wing, a manifestation of the Jenova cell's influence on his physiology, is spread behind him. He looks almost peaceful, like a statue or a sleeping angel, rather than the monster who has doomed the world. But as the party enters the chamber, his eyes open. They glow with an otherworldly light, Mako-infused, but something more, something that speaks to the transformation he has undergone. When Sephiroth speaks, his voice carries the weight of the knowledge he has absorbed from the livestream. The confidence of someone who believes himself on the verge of divinity. The conversation that follows is less a negotiation and more a declaration. Sephiroth explains his plan, describes what he will become when he absorbs the lifestream, offers the party the chance to understand the futility of their opposition. He is not angry or hateful, he's beyond such emotions. From his perspective, the party are insects trying to stop a force of nature, worthy of neither rage nor pity. Cloud responds not with the false bravado of his fractured persona, but with the genuine determination of someone who understands exactly what's at stake. He acknowledges that he's not a soldier, that he's not the hero he pretended to be, but that he's still going to stop Sephiroth. Not because he's stronger, he's not. Not because he has a better plan, he doesn't, but because someone has to try, and he's the one who's here. Sephiroth's response is to attack, but not in his physical form. That remains suspended in crystal, protected and preparing for the moment of transformation. Instead, he manifests his will in monstrous forms, using the power he's accumulated over 5 years in the lifestream to create bodies that can fight on his behalf. The first of these is Bizarro Sephiroth, a nightmarish entity that barely resembles human form. It's massive, towering over the party, with multiple appendages and attack points, reality seeming to warp around it. This is Sephiroth's will, given physical expression, a manifestation of his power that tests the party's strength. It's not meant to destroy them. Sephiroth has transcended the point where he fears being defeated, but to gauge whether they're worthy of facing his final form. The battle against Bizarro Sephiroth is brutal. The creature attacks with magical power drawn directly from the lifestream, with physical strikes that can kill party members instantly, with abilities that seem to bend the rules of combat. The party fights with everything they have, using their limit breaks, their most powerful materia, their accumulated skills and tactics. It's a coordinated effort that showcases how far they've come since the journey began, how the disparate individuals have become a unified force. And slowly, impossibly, they wear down the manifestation. Bizarro Sephiroth falls, its body dispersing into streams of energy that flow back toward the crystalline shell where Sephiroth's true form waits. But this was merely the prelude. As Bizarro Sephiroth disperses, the chamber transforms. The walls seem to fall away, revealing a void filled with swirling colors and lights. This is no longer entirely physical space, but something that exists partially in the lifestream, partially in reality, a place where the boundaries have become blurred. And from the crystal emerges Sephiroth's ultimate form, Safer Sephiroth, the Angel of Death, the manifestation of his will to ascend to godhood. This form is both beautiful and terrible. The black wing has expanded into multiple wing-like appendages. Sephiroth floats in the void, his body transformed but still recognizable, holding the Masamune in one hand while cosmic energy swirls around him. He has positioned himself at the center of the chamber, exactly where the lifestream will gather when Meteor strikes, ready to absorb it the moment it arrives in concentrated form. The battle against Safer Sephiroth is the most desperate fight of the party's lives. This is Sephiroth at the peak of his power, wielding magic that can warp reality, physical strikes that move faster than the eye can follow, techniques that draw directly from the lifestream's accumulated knowledge. He attacks with Supernova, a spell that appears to destroy the entire solar system, showing the scale of power he commands. He uses Heartless Angel to reduce party members to near-death states, stripping away their accumulated strength in an instant. He strikes with the Masamune, each swing carrying the force of 5 years of accumulated energy. Against this overwhelming power, the party should have no chance. But they fight anyway. They use their limit breaks, pushing their physical and mental capabilities beyond normal human limits, channeling their own will and determination into attacks that can actually harm this godlike being. Cloud's Omnislash, a flurry of strikes that concentrates all his strength into a single sequence of blows, tears through Sephiroth's defenses. Barrett's Catastrophe brings overwhelming firepower. Tifa's Final Heaven channels her emotional strength into physical force. One by one, the party members unleash everything they have, and slowly, incredibly, they begin to overwhelm even Safer Sephiroth. Not because they're stronger, they're not. But because they fight together, because they fight for something beyond themselves, because their will to protect their world and their friends proves stronger than Sephiroth's will to become a god. Safer Sephiroth falls, his body dispersing, his form unable to maintain cohesion under the accumulated damage. But even this is not the end. As the manifestation collapses, Sephiroth's true consciousness, his essential will, makes one final attempt. The scene shifts again, and Cloud finds himself standing alone in a void. This is no longer physical space, but the mental realm, the place where consciousness exists without form. And there, standing before him with the Masamune drawn, is Sephiroth, stripped of all divine trappings, reduced to his essential self. This is the core of what Sephiroth has become, the will that has sustained his consciousness for 5 years in the livestream, the purpose that drove him to doom the world. The final battle is not really a battle in the traditional sense. It's a contest of wills, a psychological confrontation where the victor will be the one whose sense of self proves stronger. Sephiroth attacks, but Cloud is ready. This time, there is no manipulation, no control through Jenova cells, no psychological pressure exploiting false memories. Cloud knows who he is, knows what Sephiroth is, knows what he's fighting for. When the Masamune swings toward him, Cloud doesn't dodge or block. He catches the blade with his bare hands, stopping Sephiroth's attack through sheer determination. And then, with Sephiroth's own weapon in his grasp, Cloud swings the Buster Sword one final time, striking Sephiroth down. In the mental realm, this defeat is absolute. Sephiroth's consciousness, unable to maintain its coherence, begins to disperse into the livestream. The will that sustained him, the purpose that drove him, the terrible ambition that had doomed the world, all of it collapses under Cloud's decisive strike. Sephiroth's form fades, his presence in the mental realm dissolving like smoke. And in the physical chamber where his body had been suspended, the crystalline shell shatters. Sephiroth's physical form, no longer sustained by his will, begins to break apart, the Jenova cells that had preserved it losing their cohesion. The man who had sought to become a god dies as a man, his consciousness finally scattering into the livestream. His 5-year plan ending in failure at the crucial moment. But the world is not yet saved. Meteor is still approaching, still locked on its trajectory toward the northern crater. Sephiroth's death prevents him from absorbing the livestream, but it doesn't stop the impact. The party escapes the northern crater as it begins to collapse, racing back to the surface as the chamber where Sephiroth waited crumbles. They emerge to see Meteor filling the sky, so close now that it blots out the sun, its surface visible in terrible detail. In hours, perhaps minutes, it will strike, and even without Sephiroth to exploit the resulting wound, the impact will still devastate the planet. Billions will die, civilization will collapse, the world as they know it will end. And then, rising from the planet itself, comes Holy. Aerith's final gift, the spell she activated from within the livestream, emerges to confront Meteor. The white materia's power manifests as a brilliant white light that surrounds the planet, moving to intercept the approaching celestial body. But something is wrong. Holy alone is not strong enough to stop Meteor. Sephiroth's 5-year accumulation of power, poured into the summoning, has made the spell too strong to be simply negated. Holy pushes against Meteor, slowing it, but cannot stop it completely. The two forces lock in a stalemate, and the planet trembles under the strain of their confrontation. At this moment, the livestream itself intervenes. The planet, recognizing the existential threat, pours forth its own energy, adding its strength to Holy. From every corner of the world, streams of green light rise from the ground, gathering around Meteor, adding the accumulated consciousness of billions of years of life to the battle against annihilation. This is the planet fighting for its survival, using every resource it possesses. And within that livestream, visible for just a moment to those who know to look, is Aerith's face, smiling, guiding the flow of energy, helping coordinate the planet's response. Even in death, she remains active, remains engaged in protecting the world she loved. Together, Holy and the livestream prove strong enough. Meteor's approach slows, stops, and then reverses. The massive celestial body is pushed back, away from the planet, its trajectory altered until it moves harmlessly past. The threat is ended, the world is saved. But the cost is enormous. The livestream's intervention, while successful, has drained the planet's energy reserves. Mako becomes scarce. The world enters a new era where humanity can no longer rely on easy access to the planet's power. It's a forced evolution towards sustainability, toward finding ways to survive without draining the world's life force. In a sense, Avalanche's original goal, stopping Shinra's exploitation of Mako energy, is achieved, but through catastrophe rather than political action. In the aftermath, Cloud and his companions stand on the edge of Midgar, watching as the life stream recedes, as Holy disperses, as the sky clears for the first time in weeks. They have won. But the victory feels hollow. Aerith is dead, and she's not the only casualty. Billions have died in the chaos of the weapons rampage and Meteor's approach. The infrastructure of civilization has collapsed. Shinra, the corporation that ruled the world, has been effectively destroyed. The survivors face a future that will require rebuilding from scratch, creating a new society that learns to live in balance with the planet rather than exploiting it. And they face this future without certainty about whether Sephiroth is truly defeated or whether his consciousness might somehow reassemble itself in the life stream for another attempt. Sephiroth sought godhood and found defeat. He wielded incredible power, commanded Jenova's cells, absorbed knowledge from the life stream, manipulated his enemies into serving his purposes, and came within moments of achieving his goal. But in the end, what defeated him was not superior power. The party was never stronger than him in pure combat capability. What defeated him was the connections he had dismissed as weakness, the bonds between individuals that gave them strength beyond their physical capabilities, the willingness of people to sacrifice themselves for something greater than their own survival. Sephiroth, isolated by his uniqueness and his ambition, could not understand these bonds, could not account for their strength in his calculations. He treated Cloud as a puppet, manipulated him perfectly according to plan, and was ultimately defeated by that same puppet, cutting his strings and choosing to fight. The puppet master fell to his own puppet. The god aspirant was struck down by a man who admitted his own weakness. And the world, having teetered on the edge of annihilation, survived to rebuild. 2 years after Meteor's defeat, the world has begun to rebuild. Midgar, once the shining jewel of Shinra's power, lies in ruins, its Mako reactors silent, its sectors collapsed. The survivors have established a new settlement called Edge on the city's outskirts, a ramshackle collection of structures built from salvaged materials, a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination to continue despite catastrophe. Life goes on, as it always does, people finding ways to adapt and survive even in drastically changed circumstances. But the shadow of Sephiroth has not entirely lifted. His influence persists, not through his consciousness directly. He was defeated, his will scattered into the life stream, but through the legacy he left behind, through the Jenova cells that remain scattered throughout the population, through the wounds he inflicted that have not fully healed. The most visible manifestation of this legacy is a disease called geostigma, a plague that affects those who were exposed to Jenova's cells or to the life stream during the final battle. Geostigma manifests as black marks on the skin that cause intense pain, weakness, and eventually death. Children are particularly susceptible, their immune systems unable to cope with the cellular corruption. The disease is effectively Jenova's cells attacking the body, attempting to continue their directive to corrupt and destroy even without Sephiroth's conscious direction. It's a reminder that although Sephiroth was defeated, the damage he did, the alterations he made to the planet's natural cycle persist. The world survived the apocalypse, but it remains wounded. Cloud Strife, hero of the conflict against Sephiroth, does not handle peace well. He operates a delivery service in Edge, riding his motorcycle across the wasteland, bringing packages to the scattered settlements that have sprung up across the continent. It's honest work, productive work, but it's also clearly a form of running away. Cloud is haunted by guilt over Aerith's death, guilt over the role he played in nearly destroying the world, guilt over surviving when so many died. He has developed geostigma himself, the black marks appearing on his arm, and he views it as a form of cosmic justice, a punishment he deserves for his failures. He has distanced himself from Tifa and the others, isolating himself emotionally even while remaining physically present. the man who found his true self in the livestream, who defeated Sephiroth through acceptance of his weakness and commitment to protecting others, has reverted to avoidance and self-recrimination. This psychological state makes Cloud vulnerable when Sephiroth's legacy manifests in a new form. Three young men begin appearing throughout the world, calling themselves Kadaj, Loz, and Yazoo. They refer to themselves as brothers and speak of searching for their mother, Jenova. These are the remnants of Sephiroth, physical manifestations of his lingering will, created from his consciousness that remained in the livestream after his defeat. They are not reincarnations or resurrections in the traditional sense, but rather expressions of different aspects of Sephiroth's personality given independent form. Kadaj embodies his cruelty and madness, Loz his strength and sentimentality, and Yazoo his cold precision. Together, they seek to trigger a new reunion, to gather Jenova's remaining cells and reform their mother, believing that this will allow Sephiroth to return. The remnants target those with geostigma, recognizing that these individuals carry Jenova's cells in their bodies. They gather children afflicted with the disease, taking them to the ruins of the Forgotten City, the site where Aerith died. Their plan is to access Jenova's remaining cells, which, unknown to most, are in the possession of Rufus Shinra, who survived the destruction of Shinra headquarters and has been working from the shadows to atone for his corporation's actions. The remnants will force a reunion of all Jenova's cells, reforming her body and triggering a new crisis. And if they succeed, if they can gather sufficient cellular material, Sephiroth himself may be able to manifest again, to make another attempt at the godhood that was denied him 2 years prior. Cloud initially tries to avoid involvement with this new crisis. He's already struggling with his guilt and his disease, already feeling that he failed as a hero despite having saved the world. The appearance of Sephiroth's remnants reopens wounds he thought had healed, reminds him of his manipulation and his role in nearly causing the apocalypse. When confronted by the remnants, when Kadaj specifically targets him, Cloud fights, but without full commitment, still caught in his cycle of self-recrimination. It takes intervention from his companions, particularly Tifa, and from beyond death Aerith herself, to help Cloud recognize that his guilt, while understandable, is ultimately selfish. By isolating himself, by refusing to engage with the present crisis because he's focused on past failures, he's allowing more people to be hurt. Heroism isn't about being perfect or about never making mistakes. It's about continuing to fight even after failure, especially after failure. This realization comes to a head at the Forgotten City, where Kadaj has gathered the children with geostigma and is preparing to absorb Jenova's remaining cells. Cloud confronts the remnants, engaging in a 3-on-1 battle that showcases how his combat abilities have evolved since the defeat of Sephiroth. He fights not as the fake soldier persona or even as the broken individual who barely functioned during the original journey, but as himself, Cloudstrife, delivery man, former infantry soldier, someone who is not exceptional by birth or enhancement, but who chooses to fight anyway. The battle with the remnants is intense, showcasing their superhuman abilities inherited from Sephiroth. But Cloud holds his own through skill, determination, and the refusal to give up even when outmatched. But the remnants are not the true threat. When Kadaj finally obtains Jenova's cells from Rufus Shinra, who had been keeping them hidden in an attempt to prevent exactly this scenario, the young man absorbs them directly. The cells transform him, his body serving as a vessel for Sephiroth's will. Kadaj's form begins to change, his features shifting, his silver hair growing longer, his body restructuring itself. And then, standing where Kadaj had been moments before, is Sephiroth. Not an illusion or a puppet this time, but a physical manifestation, the one-winged angel returned from death, wearing a cruel smile as he recognizes Cloud standing before him. This version of Sephiroth is different from the being Cloud fought 2 years ago. He's not trying to summon Meteor or absorb the lifestream. He's not seeking godhood, at least not immediately. Instead, he seems focused on a more personal goal: defeating Cloud, proving his superiority, settling the score with the man who struck him down. Perhaps this is because this manifestation is incomplete, formed from Kadaj's body rather than his own. Perhaps it's because Sephiroth's consciousness, having been scattered and reformed, has lost some of the cosmic perspective it gained in the lifestream, and reverted to more human motivations. Or perhaps Sephiroth simply recognizes that Cloud represents his greatest obstacle, the puppet who cut his strings, and defeating Cloud is a prerequisite to any larger plan. Whatever the reason, Sephiroth's focus is entirely on Cloud, and the battle they engage in becomes intensely personal. The fight takes place above Edge, on the ruins of old buildings, with both combatants using superhuman abilities that let them leap impossible distances and move at speeds that blur into afterimages. Sephiroth wields the Masamune with his characteristic precision, each strike designed to kill, each movement economical and deadly. Cloud matches him blow for blow with the fusion sword, a weapon designed to separate into multiple blades that he can wield in combination. The choreography of their battle is a dance of death, two warriors at the peak of their abilities trading strikes that would kill normal humans instantly. Sephiroth has the advantage in raw power and speed, he always has, but Cloud has something Sephiroth lacks. He fights not for his own glory or for abstract ambitions of godhood. He fights to protect the people of Edge, the children Kadaj gathered, Tifa and his friends, the world that's trying to rebuild, and that purpose gives him strength beyond his physical capabilities. During the battle, Sephiroth speaks to Cloud, attempting psychological manipulation, trying to reopen the wounds of guilt and failure that have plagued Cloud for 2 years. He reminds Cloud of his manipulation, of how easily Cloud handed over the black materia, of Aerith's death and Cloud's inability to prevent it. He suggests that Cloud enjoyed being controlled, that being a puppet was easier than accepting responsibility for his own actions. It's a cruel tactic designed to destabilize Cloud's mental state, to create the openings that Sephiroth can exploit physically. For a moment, it seems to work. Cloud hesitates, his guard dropping, memories of his manipulation flooding back. But then, from beyond death, Aerith intervenes. Throughout the Advent Children crisis, she has been working from within the lifestream, preparing a cure for geostigma, channeling the planet's power to cleanse the corruption caused by Jenova's cells. Now, at this crucial moment, she makes her presence known to Cloud, speaking to him in a way that only he can hear. She reminds him that the past cannot be changed, but the present can. She tells him that he needs to forgive himself, not because he deserves forgiveness. Guilt and deserving are not the point, but because self-recrimination prevents him from protecting the people who need him now. And in this moment, Cloud finds peace, not complete peace, but enough to let go of the paralyzing guilt and focus on the present battle. The shift in Cloud's mindset is immediately visible in his combat. He stops fighting defensively, stops second-guessing his actions, stops holding back out of fear that he might fail again. He engages Sephiroth with full commitment, matching the one-winged angel strike for strike, using his limit breaks with devastating effect. Omnislash version 5, an enhanced version of his ultimate technique, allows Cloud to strike Sephiroth multiple times in rapid succession, each blow fueled by the determination to end this threat permanently. Sephiroth, for the first time, is pushed entirely onto the defensive, unable to create the openings he needs, unable to land the decisive strike that would end the battle in his favor. And then, in a sequence that mirrors their first confrontation at Nibelheim, Cloud and Sephiroth clash one final time. The Masamune and the fusion sword lock together, and for a moment, the two warriors are face to face, their weapons crossed, their wills contesting for dominance. Sephiroth smiles, still confident, still believing in his superiority. Cloud, no longer the broken puppet or the false soldier, simply pushes forward. The fusion sword breaks through Sephiroth's guard, striking him cleanly, and the one-winged angel's form begins to dissipate. Kadaj's body, which had been transformed into Sephiroth, reverts, the young man's last moments spent not in service to his mother, but in recognition of what he actually was. A tool, a remnant, a fragment of something that should have stayed dead. With Sephiroth's defeat, the immediate crisis ends. But more importantly, Aerith releases the cure for geostigma that she's been preparing. Rain falls on Edge, but this is not normal rain. It's infused with the lifestream, carrying the healing power of the planet itself. Those afflicted with geostigma, including Cloud and the gathered children, find the black marks fading from their skin, the pain subsiding, the corruption cleansed. The wounds Sephiroth inflicted, both physical and spiritual, begin to heal. The children who had been gathered by Kadaj return to their families. The world, having faced a second threat from Sephiroth's legacy, has survived again and can continue its recovery. In the aftermath, Cloud stands in the rain, feeling the geostigma fade, experiencing the physical manifestation of forgiveness and healing. He looks up and just for a moment sees two figures standing together, Aerith and Zack, the people whose deaths have haunted him, smiling at him from beyond. It's a vision, perhaps, or a genuine manifestation from the livestream, but its message is clear. The dead do not blame him. They're at peace, and they want him to find peace as well. Not the peace of death or of isolation, but the peace of accepting his past, learning from his failures, and continuing to live and fight and protect. Cloud smiles, perhaps the first genuine smile since Meteor's defeat, and returns to Tifa and the others, ready to rejoin them, to stop running from his guilt and to embrace the present. Sephiroth's return, brief as it was, has ended in defeat once more. His consciousness, manifested through Kadaj's body, is sent back to the livestream, and this time the damage he can cause from that dispersed state is neutralized by Aerith's cure, which cleanses Jenova's cells from the population. The remnants are gone, the geostigma is cured, and the world can finally move forward without the shadow of Sephiroth hanging over it. Or so it seems. Because as the Advent children's story ends, as Cloud moves forward with his life, a question remains unanswered. Can Sephiroth's will truly be destroyed? Can consciousness that strong, that determined, that unwilling to accept defeat ever truly dissipate into nothing? Or will he find another way, another avenue, another opportunity to return and make yet another attempt at the transcendence that has been denied him twice? The answer to that question would not come for many years, until a new timeline, a new crisis, and a new manifestation of Sephiroth's impossible refusal to simply cease existing. When Final Fantasy VII Remake was announced, fans expected a graphical update, perhaps some expanded storytelling, maybe some modern gameplay mechanics applied to a classic plot. What they received instead was something far more ambitious and far stranger. A story that was simultaneously a remake of the original and a sequel to it. A narrative that respected the established timeline while also subverting it. Introducing concepts that suggested the Sephiroth they would face was not the one from the original game, but something that had evolved far beyond that point. The tagline on promotional materials read, "Play it or watch it. That's up to fate." But the game itself seemed to be about defying fate, about changing what was supposed to be unchangeable. And at the center of this narrative shift was Sephiroth, appearing far earlier and acting far stranger than he had in the original timeline. The first hint that something is different comes early in Remake, during Cloud's first mission with Avalanche to destroy a Mako reactor. As Cloud escapes the exploding reactor, he experiences a vision, a flash of the future, showing Sephiroth walking through flames, the Nibelheim incident that should be a buried memory appearing as a premonition. Cloud doesn't understand what he's seeing, attributes it to stress or misfiring synapses, but the player recognizes it. This is something that shouldn't happen yet, a memory or vision that's appearing at the wrong time in the timeline. And throughout Remake, these visions continue, showing Cloud fragments of the original game's plot. Moments that haven't occurred yet in this timeline, but which feel like memories. Then Sephiroth himself appears, and he appears far too early. In the original Final Fantasy VII, Sephiroth doesn't show up until after Midgar, doesn't become a presence in Cloud's life until the flashback at Calm, where Cloud recounts the Nibelheim incident. But in Remake, Sephiroth appears to Cloud multiple times during the Midgar section. He manifests in visions, speaks to Cloud directly, seems to know things he shouldn't know. And the things he says are strange, cryptic, suggesting knowledge that extends beyond what should be possible. He speaks of Cloud needing to run, to defy destiny, to not let himself be controlled by fate. He asks Cloud if he really thinks he can save her, a reference to Aerith that makes no sense in this timeline because Cloud has barely met Aerith and Sephiroth has no reason to even know she exists yet. The most significant appearance comes at the end of Remake, during the confrontation with the Whispers, mysterious spectral entities that appear throughout the game, seemingly working to keep events on track with the original timeline. These whispers intervene whenever something threatens to deviate from what should happen, pushing characters back onto their predetermined paths, preventing changes that would alter destiny. Aerith seems particularly aware of them, suggesting she has knowledge beyond what she should possess, perhaps memories from the original timeline leaking through. And when the party finally confronts the whispers directly, entering a singularity where they can fight against fate itself, Sephiroth is there, watching, seemingly orchestrating events. During the final battle of Remake, the party fights against massive whisper entities, manifestations of destiny trying to prevent any deviation from the original timeline. And standing beyond them, observing but not yet acting, is Sephiroth. He makes it clear that he wants Cloud and the others to succeed in defeating the Whispers, wants them to break free from the predetermined path. This is bizarre behavior for someone who should be the antagonist. In the original timeline, Sephiroth's plan depended on events following a specific sequence. Cloud being manipulated, the party retrieving the black materia, Meteor being summoned. Why would he want to change that? Why would he encourage the party to defy fate when fate led to, well, to him nearly succeeding before being defeated? The answer suggested by Remake's ending is both simple and mind-bending. This Sephiroth has memories of the original timeline. He knows how events are supposed to unfold because he experienced them. He knows that his plan to summon Meteor and absorb the lifestream failed. He knows that Cloud defeated him. He knows how the story ends, and he wants to change it. When the Whispers are defeated, when the party breaks through the barrier of predetermined destiny, Sephiroth appears before Cloud and offers him a chance. Join with him. Defy destiny together. Cloud, not understanding what Sephiroth is really offering, refuses and attacks. They fight, and the battle echoes their final confrontation from the original timeline, the mental realm clash where Cloud struck Sephiroth down. But this time, Sephiroth isn't trying to kill Cloud. He's testing him, gauging his strength, confirming something. When the battle ends, when Cloud strikes what should be a decisive blow, Sephiroth simply fades away, speaking a cryptic line, 7 seconds till the end. Time enough for you, perhaps, but what will you do with it? It's a reference that Cloud doesn't understand, but which carries tremendous weight for anyone who knows the original game. 7 seconds is approximately how long the player has to react during Aerith's death scene, the moment between when Sephiroth begins his attack and when his blade pierces her. In the original timeline, those 7 seconds weren't enough. Cloud couldn't save her. But in this new timeline, with fate potentially malleable, could those 7 seconds be enough? Could Cloud change what seemed unchangeable? The full implications of this become clearer in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the second part of the Remake trilogy. Here we follow the party beyond Midgar, retracing the journey of the original game, but with significant deviations. One of the most significant is the presence of Zack Fair, who in this timeline somehow survived his final stand against Shinra troops, the moment that should have been his death. Zack's survival creates a paradox, or perhaps an alternate timeline running parallel to the main one. He's shown carrying a comatose Cloud toward Midgar, suggesting events split off from the original path at some point. Whether this is a true alternate timeline or something more complex remains to be fully explained. But its existence suggests that fate is indeed malleable in ways it wasn't in the original story. Throughout Rebirth, Sephiroth continues to appear to Cloud, and his behavior remains strange. He seems less interested in manipulation and more interested in recruitment. He speaks to Cloud almost as an ally, suggests they're alike, implies they should work together. He shows Cloud visions of possible futures, multiple timelines branching off from decision points. He speaks of ending all worlds, suggesting his ambitions have expanded beyond simply absorbing one planet's lifestream to something far more cosmic. This is not the Sephiroth from the original timeline, the one who was driven mad by the revelation of his origins and sought godhood. This is something that has evolved past that point, something with knowledge and ambitions that span multiple timelines. The question of how this is possible, how Sephiroth could have memories of the original timeline, is addressed through the concept of the lifestream being connected across different timelines or realities. When Sephiroth was defeated at the end of the original Final Fantasy VII, his consciousness entered the lifestream. When he was defeated again in Advent Children, his will dispersed into the lifestream once more. But what if that dispersal wasn't complete destruction? What if, instead of simply ceasing to exist, fragments of Sephiroth's consciousness remained in the lifestream, and the lifestream itself serves as a connection point between different timelines? This would mean that the Sephiroth appearing in Remake and Rebirth has access to the memories and knowledge from the original timeline, having experienced the events of Final Fantasy VII and Advent Children before somehow projecting his consciousness backward or sideways into this new timeline. This makes Remake/Rebirth Sephiroth potentially the most dangerous version of the character ever faced. He's not just strong, not just smart. He knows the future. He knows how the heroes defeated him before. He knows their strategies, their strengths, their weaknesses. He knows when and where Aerith will die because he was there, was the one who killed her. And with the defeat of the Whispers, with fate now malleable, he has the opportunity to change events, to avoid the mistakes that led to his previous defeats, to achieve the godhood that was denied him twice before. But he's not simply trying to avoid his defeat. His ambitions seem to have expanded. He speaks of ending all worlds, of 7 seconds until the end, suggesting a plan that goes beyond even his previous goal of absorbing one planet's lifestream. The culmination of this comes at the Temple of the Ancients in Rebirth, where events echo the original timeline but with crucial differences. The party retrieves the black materia, and Sephiroth manipulates Cloud into delivering it. But the psychological manipulation is different. Sephiroth isn't simply exploiting Cloud's false memories and fractured psyche. He's showing Cloud multiple timelines, multiple possibilities, offering him choices. It's as if Sephiroth wants Cloud to consciously choose to help him, rather than being an unwitting puppet. This could be a more sophisticated form of manipulation, making Cloud believe he has agency when he's still being controlled. Or it could represent a genuine shift in Sephiroth's goals, a recognition that Cloud's will is too strong to be simply dominated, and that a willing ally would be more valuable than a broken puppet. The most shocking deviation from the original timeline comes at the Forgotten City. In the original, this is where Aerith dies, killed by Sephiroth's blade as she prays to activate Holy. In Rebirth, events unfold differently. Multiple timelines seem to converge or diverge at this location. There are flashes showing different outcomes, timelines where Aerith lives, timelines where she dies, timelines where Cloud successfully blocks Sephiroth's attack during those 7 seconds. The scene is deliberately ambiguous, presented in a way that makes it unclear exactly what happened. Did Aerith die as she did in the original timeline? Did she survive? Do both outcomes exist simultaneously in different timelines? The game doesn't provide a clear answer, leaving players in a state of uncertainty that mirrors Cloud's own confusion about what is real and what is merely a vision of what could be. What is clear is that Sephiroth's plan extends beyond simply changing his own fate. He speaks of creating a new world, of uniting all timelines into something he can control. If the lifestream connects different timelines, if consciousness can flow between them, then perhaps Sephiroth envisions absorbing not just one planet's lifestream, but the collective consciousness across all possible timelines. It would be godhood on a scale beyond anything he attempted in the original timeline, not just ascending beyond the limitations of one world, but transcending the concept of singular reality entirely, becoming a being that exists across all possible variations of events, eternal and omnipresent throughout the multiverse. This interpretation makes Sephiroth's encouragement of Cloud to defy destiny make sense. By breaking the predetermined path, by making fate malleable, Cloud and the party have created the conditions that allow Sephiroth to pursue this expanded ambition. In the original timeline, events were fixed, and even his near success ended in defeat. But in a timeline where fate can be changed, where multiple possibilities can coexist, Sephiroth has opportunities he didn't have before. He can learn from his previous failures while his opponents cannot, because he remembers both the original timeline and this new one, while they only know the present. It's a devastating advantage, turning what should be a remake of a known story into something unpredictable and dangerous. The presence of this Sephiroth also explains his changed demeanor. He's calmer, more patient, less driven by the immediate madness that characterized him after the Nibelheim incident. Having experienced death, defeat, and existence as dispersed consciousness in the life stream, having perhaps existed across multiple timelines or iterations of reality, this Sephiroth has evolved beyond simple revenge or even the desire for transcendence. He's become something cosmic, his motivations so far beyond normal human concerns that they're almost incomprehensible. When he tells Cloud they're alike, when he offers alliance rather than simply attempting domination, it's not manipulation in the traditional sense. It's an invitation to join something that Sephiroth believes is inevitable, a recognition that Cloud has also transcended normal human limitations through his experiences. Cloud, however, refuses. Despite the visions, despite the confusion about timelines and possibilities, despite Sephiroth's apparent knowledge of the future, Cloud maintains his core purpose: to stop Sephiroth, to protect his friends, to save the world. He doesn't fully understand what Sephiroth has become or what his plan truly entails, but he understands enough to know that whatever Sephiroth is offering, whatever world he promises to create, it's built on the destruction of the current reality and the sacrifice of everyone Cloud cares about. So Cloud fights, and the battle between them becomes not just physical, but metaphysical, a clash between someone trying to preserve reality as it is and someone trying to transcend and recreate it. Where this will ultimately lead remains to be seen. The remake trilogy is not yet complete, and the third part will presumably show the final confrontation between this timeline's Cloud and this evolved Sephiroth. What is certain is that the stakes are even higher than they were in the original timeline. It's not just one world at risk, but potentially multiple timelines, alternate realities, the very concept of fixed causality. Sephiroth has become something beyond the villain of the original Final Fantasy VII. He's become a threat to reality itself, a consciousness that refuses to be constrained by normal limitations of existence, death, or even narrative causality. He is, in every sense, the perfect Final Fantasy villain, a being whose ambitions extend beyond merely conquering the world to fundamentally rewriting what world even means. To understand Sephiroth completely, we must look beyond his actions and examine his philosophy, the worldview that drives his decisions and shapes his ambitions. At his core, Sephiroth represents a fascinating examination of what happens when incredible power is paired with isolation, when someone is made exceptional but denied the human connections that give exceptionalism meaning. His evolution from hero to monster to god aspirant to trans-temporal entity is not random, but follows a logical progression based on premises that, while horrifying in their conclusion, are internally consistent. Sephiroth is not evil for evil's sake. He's a rational actor, operating from assumptions that differ fundamentally from those of ordinary people. The first premise of Sephiroth's philosophy is that power determines worth. This is a natural conclusion for someone created specifically to be powerful, whose entire identity was shaped around his exceptional capabilities. From birth, Sephiroth was told he was special, superior, destined for greatness. His value to Shinra, and by extension his value as a person, was measured entirely by his combat effectiveness, his strategic acumen, his ability to accomplish missions that others could not. He internalized this measurement, accepting it as natural and correct. In Sephiroth's worldview, those with strength have the right to determine fate, while those without strength exist to be acted upon rather than to act. This is not cruelty from his perspective, it's simply recognition of natural hierarchy. This philosophy explains Sephiroth's casual dismissal of normal humans as insignificant. When he burns Nibelheim, he's not attacking people he hates personally. He's clearing away obstacles that he views as having no inherent worth. They are weak, therefore they don't matter. This seems monstrously callous to us, but from Sephiroth's perspective, shaped by a lifetime of being measured entirely by his capabilities, it's logical. If worth derives from power, then those without power have no worth. It's a philosophy that strips away empathy and reduces all interactions to questions of capability. Can you stop me? No? Then your objections are meaningless, your suffering irrelevant, your existence disposable. The second premise is that isolation is strength. Sephiroth has few meaningful connections throughout his life. His relationships with Genesis and Angeal are collegial but distant. He has admirers, but no real friends. He is worshipped but not known. This isolation is not entirely his choice. He was made so exceptional that genuine peer relationships were nearly impossible. Who could relate to someone whose very cells were alien, whose capabilities far exceeded any other human, whose purpose was to be a weapon rather than a person? But Sephiroth rationalizes this isolation as beneficial. Connections are weaknesses that can be exploited. Emotions are liabilities that cloud judgment. His lack of bonds is not a tragedy, but a source of strength, freeing him from the concerns that limit ordinary people. This premise explains why Sephiroth cannot comprehend what ultimately defeats him: the connections between Cloud and his companions. To Sephiroth, these bonds should be weaknesses, vulnerabilities that can be exploited through manipulation or targeted violence. Instead, they prove to be sources of strength that allow individuals who are separately weaker than him to collectively overcome his power. This is incomprehensible to Sephiroth's worldview. How can caring about others make you stronger? How can willingness to sacrifice yourself for friends be anything but a liability? He cannot understand it because he has never experienced it, has spent his entire existence operating under the assumption that isolation equals strength and connections equal weakness. The third premise is that identity is constructed rather than inherent. This becomes crucial after the Nibelheim incident, when Sephiroth learns the truth of his creation. The revelation that he was manufactured, that his genetic code was deliberately altered, that he was designed rather than born, could have destroyed his sense of self. Instead, he accepts it and takes it further. If identity is constructed, then it can be reconstructed according to will. He was made to be a weapon. Fine, but he'll determine what that weapon is aimed at. He was created through experiments with an alien entity. Then he'll embrace that alien nature, use it to transcend the limitations that constrain those who were born naturally. His manufactured origin becomes not a source of shame, but the foundation for his ambition to remake himself into something beyond what his creators intended. This premise explains Sephiroth's evolution through his various forms and his willingness to shed his humanity in pursuit of godhood. Most people derive their sense of self from their relationships, their history, their place in a community. Sephiroth has none of these attachments, so his sense of self is based purely on will and power. If he can accumulate enough power, he can reconstruct his identity entirely, can become literally anything he chooses to be. The human form is simply a starting point, not a limitation. The biological constraints that bind others are irrelevant when one has the will to transcend them. His successive transformations, from human to something hosting alien cells to a being merged with life-stream consciousness to potentially a trans-temporal entity, all follow from this belief that identity is choice rather than fate. The fourth premise is that knowledge justifies action. When Sephiroth gains access to the life-stream's accumulated knowledge, when he learns about the Cetra, about Jenova, about the planet's true nature, he treats this knowledge as license to act on a cosmic scale. He knows more than anyone else, has access to information accumulated over thousands of years, understands mechanisms that others can barely imagine. This knowledge, in his view, gives him the right to make decisions about the planet's fate. Ordinary people, limited by their lifespans and perspectives, cannot understand what he understands. Therefore, their objections to his plans are based on ignorance and can be dismissed. It's a utilitarian calculus taken to a horrifying extreme. His knowledge and capabilities mean he should be the one to decide what happens, regardless of what anyone else wants. This premise is particularly evident in his interactions with Cloud in the remake timeline. Sephiroth has knowledge of how events played out in the original timeline, knowledge of multiple possibilities and alternate futures. This information asymmetry puts him in a position of power that goes beyond physical strength. He can see moves ahead, can manipulate events with the benefit of hindsight, can offer Cloud choices while already knowing the likely outcomes. And from his perspective, this knowledge justifies his actions. He's not evil, he's simply informed. He's not manipulating Cloud, he's offering him a chance to ascend beyond his limited perspective to see what Sephiroth sees. The fact that Cloud refuses, that he chooses to fight despite not understanding the full scope of what he's fighting against, is incomprehensible to Sephiroth. Why would you oppose something you don't understand? Why wouldn't you defer to someone with greater knowledge? The fifth and perhaps most fundamental premise is that transcendence is the only worthy goal. For Sephiroth, remaining human, remaining limited by mortal constraints, is a waste of potential. He was made to be exceptional, so why accept any limitations at all? His plan to absorb the life stream and become a god is not madness from his perspective, but the logical endpoint of his existence. He was created as humanity's greatest weapon. Ascending to godhood is simply the final step in his evolution. And in the remake timeline, even that isn't enough. Why settle for being a god of one planet when knowledge of multiple timelines suggests the possibility of transcending the very concept of singular existence? Ambition without limit, power without constraint, knowledge without boundary, these are the only goals worthy of someone who was made to be more than human. These premises, taken together, create a philosophy that is internally consistent, but fundamentally incompatible with human society or empathy. Sephiroth's worldview demands that he pursue power without limit, that he view others as either tools or obstacles, that he reconstruct himself without regard for the destruction this causes. He is not mad in the sense of being irrational. His actions follow logically from his premises. He's mad in the sense that his premises have led him to conclusions that require the destruction of everything that makes human existence meaningful. He has optimized for power at the expense of connection, for knowledge at the expense of wisdom, for transcendence at the expense of belonging. And yet, there's a tragedy to Sephiroth that cannot be ignored. He was made to be what he is. The isolation that shapes his philosophy was imposed upon him by his creation. The measurement of worth by capability was the only framework he was ever given. His lack of meaningful relationships stems from being made so exceptional that normal connections were impossible. In a sense, Sephiroth is both victimizer and victim, the villain who threatens the world and the weapon that was never given a choice about what it would become. This doesn't excuse his actions or make him less dangerous, but it adds depth to his character. He is not simply evil, he is the inevitable result of a specific set of circumstances, a cautionary tale about what happens when you create something designed only to be powerful without considering what gives power meaning. The question raised by Sephiroth's philosophy is whether he could have become anything else. If he had been given genuine relationships, if his worth had been measured by something other than capability, if his isolation had not been absolute, could he have developed a different worldview? The answer suggested by the narrative is probably not, or at least not easily. The Jenova cells that permeate his body, the alien DNA that shapes his physiology, the very structure of his creation predisposed him toward the path he took. He was always going to be exceptional, always going to be isolated by that exceptionalism, always going to question his place in a world of people so much weaker than himself. Perhaps with different influences, with more support, with genuine friendships that saw him as a person rather than a weapon, he might have developed empathy to balance his power. But those influences never materialized, and so Sephiroth followed his philosophy to its logical conclusion. The pursuit of godhood, the rejection of humanity, the attempt to transcend all limitations even if it meant destroying the world in the process. Understanding Sephiroth's philosophy doesn't make him sympathetic in the sense of excusing his actions, but it makes him comprehensible. He is not a mindless force of destruction or evil for evil's sake. He is a rational actor operating from premises that lead inevitably to monstrous conclusions. He is what happens when power is divorced from connection, when intelligence is separated from empathy, when capability is measured without considering purpose. He is, in many ways, the dark mirror of the heroes who oppose him. They derive strength from bonds, while he views bonds as weakness. They fight to protect while he fights to transcend. They accept their limitations and find ways to overcome them together, while he pursues unlimited power alone. The conflict between Sephiroth and the heroes of Final Fantasy VII is not just a battle of physical strength, but a contest between fundamentally different philosophies about what makes existence meaningful and what, if anything, justifies the exercise of power. And though Sephiroth has been defeated multiple times, his philosophy persists as a warning. This is what exceptionalism without purpose becomes. This is the endpoint of isolation. This is what happens when someone is made to be more than human, but never taught what it means to be human at all. Sephiroth's story is one of the most complex villain arcs in all of gaming. From his conception as the product of unethical experimentation, to his rise as humanity's greatest warrior, to his descent into madness, to his transformation into a god-aspiring entity, to his potential evolution into a trans-temporal consciousness that exists across multiple timelines, Sephiroth has transcended the simple category of villain and become something far more interesting, an examination of power, identity, isolation, and ambition taken to their absolute extremes. He is simultaneously tragic and terrifying, a victim of circumstances he did not choose and a monster who embraces his monstrosity, someone who deserves both empathy for what was done to him and absolute opposition for what he chooses to do. The enduring appeal of Sephiroth lies in this complexity. He is not a simple obstacle to overcome, but a character whose motivations are comprehensible even when his actions are horrifying. We understand why he went mad when he learned the truth of his creation. We understand why he pursued godhood rather than accepting his limitations. We understand why isolation shaped him into someone who could casually destroy the world. This understanding doesn't make him less dangerous or his actions more forgivable, but it makes him more than a cardboard cutout villain. He has depth, psychology, a philosophy that explains his choices even when those choices are catastrophic. He is, in essence, a fully realized character who happens to be antagonistic rather than a villain who exists solely to be defeated. Sephiroth's influence on gaming extends far beyond Final Fantasy VII. He established many of the tropes that would define RPG villains for decades to come. The villain with a tragic backstory, the antagonist with comprehensible motivations, the enemy who believes himself to be in the right, the final boss with multiple transformations representing different aspects of his nature. His visual design, with the long silver hair, the single black wing, the impossibly long sword, has been iconic enough to be instantly recognizable even to people who have never played the game. His theme music, One-Winged Angel, with its Latin lyrics and choir accompaniment, redefined what video game boss music could be. He proved that a villain could be as important to a game's appeal as its heroes, that players would cosplay antagonists and quote their lines and debate their philosophies for decades after release. The question of whether Sephiroth can truly be defeated remains open, particularly in the remake timeline. He has died multiple times, thrown into the lifestream at Nibelheim, defeated in the northern crater, dispersed again during Advent Children. Yet each time he returns, often more dangerous than before, his consciousness refusing to simply dissipate, his will too strong to be erased. The remake timeline suggests he may have found a form of immortality that transcends even the lifestream, existing across multiple timelines or iterations of reality, learning from each defeat while his opponents remain trapped in singular timeline ignorance. If this is true, then Sephiroth has achieved a form of the transcendence he sought, becoming not a god in the traditional sense, but something perhaps more dangerous, an entity that cannot truly be killed, a consciousness that exists beyond the normal constraints of death and causality. What makes Sephiroth eternal is not just his refusal to stay dead, but what he represents. He is the dark reflection of heroism, the endpoint of exceptionalism without connection, the inevitable result of creating weapons and calling them people. He is what happens when someone is given every advantage except the one that matters most. Belonging to a community, having relationships that provide meaning beyond mere capability, understanding purpose beyond self-aggrandizement. In a sense, every version of Sephiroth's story is a warning about the dangers of isolation and the emptiness of power pursued for its own sake. He achieved everything he was designed to achieve, became stronger than any human has a right to be, gained knowledge that spanned millennia, and yet remained fundamentally empty, pursuing transcendence because he had nothing else to pursue, seeking godhood because being human never satisfied him. For Cloud and the others who oppose him, Sephiroth represents the ultimate challenge not because of his strength, but because of what he forces them to confront. In facing Sephiroth, they face questions about their own worth, their own choices, their own understanding of power and purpose. Cloud must confront his false memories and construct a true identity. Aerith must accept her role as the last ancient, and the price that role demands. Tifa must balance her desire to support Cloud with her own needs and memories. The entire party must prove that bonds and connections are sources of strength rather than weakness, that fighting for others rather than for self-aggrandizement is not just morally superior, but tactically effective. Sephiroth challenges not just their combat abilities, but their entire philosophy of existence. And in defeating him, they prove not just that they're strong enough, but that their way of being in the world is correct. The complete story of Sephiroth, from hero to god to eternal threat, is ultimately the story of a choice. At every crucial moment, Sephiroth chose power over connection, transcendence over belonging, knowledge over wisdom. He could have chosen differently. When he learned the truth of his creation, he could have sought to build genuine relationships rather than retreating into isolation and madness. When he gained access to the Lifestream's knowledge, he could have used that information to help rather than to pursue godhood. When he was defeated and his consciousness persisted in the Lifestream, he could have accepted that persistence as an opportunity to change rather than simply seeking new ways to pursue the same goals. But at each juncture, Sephiroth remained consistent to his philosophy, pursuing his ambitions without deviation, refusing to question whether those ambitions were worth the cost they demanded. And so Sephiroth remains eternal, not because he cannot be killed, he's been killed multiple times, but because what he represents, the choices he embodies, the philosophy he follows, these are perennial temptations that will never entirely disappear. There will always be people who measure worth by power, who view isolation as strength, who believe their knowledge gives them the right to make decisions for others, who pursue transcendence without considering whether transcendence is actually desirable. Sephiroth is not just one character. He's an archetype, a warning, a representation of a path that seems appealing but leads inevitably to destruction. He is eternal because the choices he represents are eternal, the temptations he embodies are eternal. The philosophy he follows is eternally seductive and eternally destructive. For players, Sephiroth serves as perhaps the perfect villain, complex enough to be interesting, powerful enough to be threatening, tragic enough to be somewhat sympathetic, and dangerous enough to require absolute opposition. He has motivated countless playthroughs of Final Fantasy VII and its related games, inspired decades of fan discussions and theories, and remains relevant nearly 30 years after his introduction. He is proof that a well-crafted antagonist can transcend the medium, becoming part of broader popular culture, recognized even by people who have never played the game he's from. The silver-haired warrior with the long sword, the one-winged angel, the man who sought to become a god. Sephiroth has earned his place among the most iconic villains in all of fiction, video game or otherwise. As the remake trilogy continues toward its conclusion, as Cloud and his companions face this evolved, timeline-transcending version of their greatest enemy, the question remains, can Sephiroth truly be defeated, or will he simply find another way to return, another angle of approach, another opportunity to pursue the transcendence that has been denied him multiple times? The answer may be that defeating Sephiroth was never really the point. The point was proving that his philosophy is wrong, that power without connection is empty, that strength alone does not determine worth, that transcendence pursued at the cost of everything that makes existence meaningful is not transcendence at all, but a different form of death. In facing Sephiroth, in refusing to submit to his manipulation, in choosing bonds over power and purpose over capability, the heroes of Final Fantasy VII demonstrate that there is another way to be exceptional, another form of strength, another type of transcendence. The transcendence of self-interest, the strength of community, the power of choosing to protect rather than to dominate. This is the complete story of Sephiroth. From his conception in Shinra's laboratories, to his rise as a legendary warrior, to his fall into madness, to his transformation into something beyond human, to his potential evolution into an entity that exists across multiple timelines, Sephiroth remains one of gaming's most fascinating characters. He is hero and monster, victim and victimizer, someone who was made to be exceptional, but never given the tools to make that exceptionalism meaningful. His story is a tragedy that he himself writes, a cautionary tale about the dangers of isolation and the emptiness of power, a warning that remains relevant no matter how many times he is defeated. And as long as Final Fantasy VII is played, discussed, and remembered, Sephiroth will endure, not as a man, not as a god, but as an idea, a question, a challenge to players to consider what they would do if given his power, whether they would make his choices, whether they could avoid his fate. The one-winged angel flies eternal, and his shadow stretches across every version of Final Fantasy VII's reality. Perhaps that, more than any physical transcendence, is the immortality he truly achieved. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of gaming's most complex and iconic villains. If you enjoyed this exploration of Sephiroth's complete story, please like this video and subscribe for more comprehensive lore content. The story of Final Fantasy VII contains depths we've barely touched in this examination, and we'll be continuing our journey through this remarkable universe in future videos. Until next time in the Lore Save Point channel, may your own story be written with purpose, connection, and the courage to face even the most impossible odds.